Do a second.
I hope we can do it. I've got to change it. So, one that I'm already there. So, I'll let them know and then we'll let Jennifer. I just think I'm
I'll let them know and then.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Let's call the August 8th regular meeting of the Verona Zoning Board of Adjustment to order at 7:32. I guess, Madam Secretary, for tonight, would you please read the notice of the meeting and call roll?
Are we going to say the Pledge of Allegiance first?
We could do the Pledge of Allegiance first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied with respect to this meeting of the Township of Verona Zoning Board of Adjustment, which is being held in person in the ballroom of the Verona Community Center, located at 880 Bloomfield Avenue, Verona. The time and date of this meeting were included in the annual meeting notice posted in the Community Center and sent to the official newspapers of the Township, the Verona Cedar Grove Times, and the Star Ledger, at least 48 hours preceding the start time of this meeting. The agenda and instructions on how to comment will be provided at the appropriate time. All meetings are recorded. Those wishing to speak during public comment should only provide their last name and municipality. Street addresses are not required. Please be advised that should a member of the public choose to state their street address, it will not be redacted from the recording. Dr. Reese. Mr. Tully.
Here.
Dr. Cortez.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mrs. Murphy Braddix. Mrs. DiBartolo.
Here.
Mr. Mathewson.
Here.
Vice Chair Weston.
Here.
Chair McGinley is excused this evening. Board Attorney Sarah. And Mr. Tenkate.
Here. All right, thank you very much. So we will move on to item E of the agenda, approval of the meeting minutes from July 11th, 2024. I assume everyone has received them and had a chance to review. Are there any comments? And if not, I will look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Scott, you said June 13th, right? 2024?
I'm sorry, July 11th.
No, this is July 11th. The minutes are from, I'm sorry, my mistake. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July 11th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain. Okay, that brings us to item F, resolutions. So we have a resolution on application 2024-12. I'm sorry, resolution 2024-12 in the matter of application 2024-09, 8 Randolph Place. Any comments on the resolution? And if not, I will look to for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And a second?
Or I'll second.
First, second, take your pick.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I'll abstain. All right, so that brings us to the next item, which is application 2024-08, 48 Durrell Street. The applicant requests to, moving this one to the, we're carrying this to the September 12th. Okay, do we need to make a motion to carry it to the September 12th?
It's already been carried, and the applicant has requested that it be carried. So at the end of the meeting this evening, we can make the announcement that there will be no further announcement. No further notice required.
Okay, could we just make that announcement now?
You can do it now.
Okay, so application 2024-08 will be carried to the September 12th meeting, which is at 7:30, and I believe, is that the one that's going to be at the
Yes.
the town council chambers?
Council chambers and municipal building.
600 Bloomfield Avenue, and there'll be no further notice required for that. Okay, that brings us to the continuation of application 2024-10, 30 Pompton Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jack Dusenberry, representing the applicant.
Mr. Schrager, this sworn?
No, and that was what I was going to do right now. All right. Mr. Schrager is here this evening to substitute for Mr. Rapp, who's on vacation, time of year. So what I would like you to do, if you'd stand and raise your right hand, and Mr. Massaro will swear you in.
Mr. Schrager, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. State your name and business address for the record, please.
Certainly. It's Aaron Schrager, Brightview Engineering, and that's at 70 South Orange Avenue in Livingston, New Jersey.
Mr. Schrager, you're a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey.
Yes, I am.
Will you tell the board a little bit about your educational background and your qualifications as an expert in professional engineering?
Certainly. I received a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute in 2000 in Worcester, Massachusetts. Received my professional engineering license in 2006 when I've served in various capacities since then. I've testified before numerous boards in New Jersey and also served as a board engineer on numerous boards and currently do, including previously on this one.
Okay, and did you state your license in New Jersey is in good standing?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
He did not state that, though. You're right.
Okay. If there's any objections, I think we could accept Mr. Schrager as an expert.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Schrager, you attended the last meeting when Mr. Rapp testified,
Yes, I did.
and you listened to his testimony,
Yes, I did.
and you've had an opportunity to review the proposed changes that have been made since the July 11th meeting.
Yes, I have.
And will you tell the board, actually, let me back up. Those changes were also summarized in my submittal letter of 2 drawings,
Correct, yes.
and you reviewed that submittal letter?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Why don't we, do you want us to mark the 2, we have them mounted, it's what was submitted under my cover letter, I believe, of July 26th. So why don't you show those to the board mounted, and we'll mark them A2 and A3, I believe, we're up to.
For the record, A2 would be the agreed block for parts, the relevant parts of the block. Please, Mr. Schrager.
A2 is the revised site plan, which is essentially SP4 of the original set, but it has a revised date of July 25th, 2024.
Thank you.
Will you write A2 on the top of that? Do you have a pen?
I did, yes.
A2 with today's date, please. Then A3 would be the aerial overlay of that plan,
That is correct, yes.
and the date on that?
Is July 25th, 2024, entitled Site Plan Aerial Overlay Exhibit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go through the changes. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to do the cloud.
Just for the record, Ms.
Yep.
Murphy Braddock's is now here.
You know, actually, as a matter of housekeeping, did we get certifications from those people who were not present last month that they've listened?
And I provide mine.
Yeah, so both the three that were not here last month, I have them.
Great, thank you. And thank you for listening to the video, because, you know, more votes the better. Okay, so let's start, and we can go right down on my letter if you'd like. The first change was what?
First change was the relocation of the loading zone to the southerly side of the building, shown over here.
All right, now, that location is consistent with where Starbucks will be expected to unload its trucks, correct?
Yes.
So that makes it a very easy unload to the ramp, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. In your opinion, with the testimony that the loading will be from 6:30 p.m. or later on a daily basis and not earlier, do you think that a truck there will interfere with traffic flow in any significant way vis-a-vis the parking spaces along the famous raised building?
No, it should not.
All right. Next change?
Next change was the ADA parking spaces that have been reconstructed in the front of the main entrance to Starbucks. We currently show 2 on this plan right here to service Starbucks with the appropriate ADA ramp and loading zones.
And there's one other ADA spot over by Famous Rays, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So that's the total of 3 that we were looking to demonstrate?
Yes.
All right, next change?
The next change is the limits of the milling and paving were added to the plan, shown more clearly on the aerial, but that was been added.
And that was one of Mr. Tenkate's requests, was it not?
Correct, yes.
All right, next change.
So the applicant is currently investigating, and we showed a possible electric vehicle charging station along Claremont Avenue, shown now on the plans.
All right, there is a comment from Mr. Tenkate about whether or not that's definitely going to happen. I can tell you that we do not know. They're expensive, but we've shown that if it were to be located, it would be best in that corner. Well, actually, let me ask that question. What's the benefit of that corner proposed location for an EV charger to them?
The location, you can service 2 vehicles with 1 station. It's also closer to electrical service, so it makes the most sense.
So it's availability of utilities right there.
Correct.
That makes it a good spot.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Disbury, those electric vehicle charging stations are not required, is that correct?
Correct. Correct. They're not, this is a pre-existing site, they're not required. Would like to have them if we can do it. Starbucks would like it, but at the moment, we're looking into the cost-benefit analysis and whether or not we can actually get it done. And honestly, it would be in the applicant's best interest because you get a 2-to-1 credit for parking. So it would help us with our parking requirements. Next item.
Next item addresses a second dumpster pad being added on the site plan, which now shows the one more southerly would be the one designated just for Starbucks, with then the other one now moved a little bit more northerly, would service the other facilities on site.
You'll recall at the last meeting, we left that as an open item to be resolved between the engineers, but since we were doing a revised SB4, we thought it was good to show that there is a good location available for that dumpster. Is that easily accessed by the 3 uses in the southerly building?
Yes, it's slightly further than it was previously,
Yeah,
and any details that we need to provide, we'll provide as part of condition or revised site
All right,
plan.
but Starbucks wants its own dumpster and its own enclosure, correct?
That's correct, and they have
Okay.
their own standards, which we'll provide.
All right, you skipped one on us, one before, number 5.
5. Oh, I apologize. The 5 parallel parking spaces have increased. This is along the access aisle from 20 feet to 21 feet.
And why did we do that?
Additional space makes it easier to maneuver. so we provided it for that reason.
So the answer is you had the room, you figured you'd take advantage of it and get as much as you could there for length of the spaces.
Exactly, yes.
All right. 7,
So
deals with the residential buffer.
exactly, the residential buffer along the properties on Claremont has been increased. Previously, it had a width of approximately possibly 4 feet, we'll call it that. So now we have average running along, it varies where it's more or less in the 8-foot range. At times it hits 9 feet. At the one bump out, it will hit 15 feet and kind of hovers around 9 feet in the beginning. So it has increased nearly approximately double in size to allow for additional plantings.
And then what is the length of the width of the buffer as it traverses southerly along the 5 spaces?
Within there, it is approximately 8 feet as well, so.
All right. Will you do me a favor, flip to the aerial, the colorized? Will you point out where the additional greenery is being proposed along that buffer so the board will get a visual about it?
Certainly, and for ease of just viewing purposes, so the darker green, the more forest green, is what's been proposed since the previous meeting. The lighter green, sage I'll call it, was just what is existing planting area. So as you can see, these green areas have been increased, but this shows the additional space along this buffer on the property line right there, with the darker green being what's been increased.
Okay, so in a couple locations, the applicant has made an effort to recover green space?
That is correct, yes.
All right, now let's go back to the buffer. How did we come to the width of the buffer getting down to 7.2 and then I think 7.9 feet at the narrowest long leg of it? Just tell the board how we got there, what our methodology was?
Yeah, the methodology, it's obviously a balancing act trying to provide as much buffer as we could while respecting the need to provide the parking and as well as a drive aisle maintaining a 24-foot width as well as the fire zone. So when we completed that, we're left with approximately 8 foot, 7.6 to 7.2 feet to provide added buffer for the
All right, so would it be accurate to say then we did what we promised at the end of the last meeting? We started from the building, worked with a fire zone, and then a 24-foot two-way cartway?
That's correct.
And then the 8-foot wide parking stalls?
Yes,
And whatever was left is what's now showing?
that is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, there's solid board fencing along the length of that that's existing?
Yes,
All right, and you heard the testimony at last meeting that the first section of it has already been replaced by the applicant? Would that be the section from Claremont down to the garage?
that is correct, yes.
All right. Now, looking at the survey, which I don't think you have mounted, but everybody has in their packet, all right, can you tell us how far off the westerly face of the fence is from the neighbor's property line?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, do you want a copy of the
If you
survey?
have a copy of the survey, yes.
Yeah, well, I know I sandbagged you with a question. I'll give you a minute to open it up, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Would it be fair to say that that fence faces the neighbor, but it's about 3.5 or 3.6? Actually, it's point.
It's 0.3.
Yeah.
At the end, it's 0.7, so less than a foot throughout.
Okay, so the fence is almost to the property line.
Correct, yes.
So a little bit of that 5-foot wide buffer is actually on the neighbor's side of the fence, is it not?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and then for the board's edification, for those who weren't here at the last meeting, as you come easterly from that fence, we have an existing guardrail, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that was the subject of a prior site plan approval when Chase Bank went in.
That's correct, yes.
All right, and in your opinion, is it a good idea to keep that guardrail in place for safety reasons?
Yes, and that is the intent, so.
So the intent is there to protect the neighbor's property from a runaway car or truck?
Right, and
Unsafe.
to maintain it through this project.
Okay, so then the applicant from the guardrail, again, traversing, I guess, in an easterly direction, you'd come to the new proposed curb line for the end of the buffer, correct?
Correct, yes.
And all that space in between that new curb line and the guardrail will all be landscaped, correct?
Yes, added plantings,
And you
yes.
would do that in conjunction with any requirements of the township engineer?
Yes,
All right. And while I'm on landscaping, there are also some infill identification areas around the building and other places where some of the shrubbery has thinned out and gotten sparse, and the applicant will agree to infill that shrubbery as needed?
correct, yes.
Okay. And then we have a space right around the first Pompton Avenue entrance to the site where we picked up some green space. Now, that's currently stone around a manhole cover, is it not?
Yes,
And that'll be landscaped as well?
correct, yes.
Okay, and then we picked up some impervious down to the southerly side of the Pompton Spa? That
Correct.
triangle, and that's going to also be shrubbed and landscaped?
Yes, it will be.
All right. Okay, just getting back to the aerial overlay for a minute, which is what you have out there. So the light green, again, is the existing green space. The dark green is what we're picking up by virtue of this application.
That's correct, yes.
All right, and then you have the dumpsters, I think, are what, slate blue or blue?
Slate blue, yes.
Okay, and then you've shown the ADA parking spaces.
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. I think he's gone through all the changes.
I have a question. Can you talk about fire lanes? Because there was testimony provided at the last meeting that the fire truck was not going to enter this site. And if memory serves correct, there's actually no door on this facade anyway, so nobody can get in that, the facade that is facing the residential units. So can you talk about is it a requirement that 4-foot fire lane around the entire perimeter?
Is that from the fire department?
No, we got no comments from the fire department at all.
So we just put in something that's just generally accepted, but yes.
So, I'm sorry, this is.
I'm sorry, no, we put on what is generally used and accepted,
Okay.
but it was not from your fire department.
And that fire lane goes around the whole building.
Correct, yes.
I could see, from an architectural standpoint, if it was required to have 100% frontage where a fire truck could get to it, I could understand that being there. But I don't think that that's the case in this instance. Just wondering if it was like a
Ms.
requirement.
DiBartolo, I will tell you that you'll hear testimony tonight that in fact, we don't believe a fire truck will go on the site.
Right, in which
But-
case, why is that
But
necessary?
fire zones are generally a standard required for buildings to keep cars from parking there. Don't forget, it's not only to allow a vehicle or an emergency vehicle to get close to the building, it's also to keep other vehicles away from the building in the event of a fire. So in other words, you don't want cars parking right next to that side of the building if there were to be a fire. So there are multiple purposes in doing fire lanes, and that's why we show it here, to keep people away from the building. Would you agree with that, Mr. Schrager?
Yes, correct. It's primarily to prevent parking, yes.
Mr. Tenkate, I think you have a comment?
Yeah, I said we could add a condition if the application approved that it's subject to fire department officials' comment on any fire zone strength.
Mr. Chairman, just for a point of clarification, and this is a sort of a personal peeve, and I think Mr. Dusenberry referenced it. The fire department, from what I understand, was given a copy of these plans, a long time ago. And the absence of a comment, and maybe council can chime in on this, would indicate that they have no problem with it. Is that a correct interpretation?
And if there's confirmation that they received it, and given that the normal course is that they do receive it, I think we can make the assumption that it was properly delivered, and yes, that if there is no comment, then there is no objection.
Because that comes up often, not just with this application. I know and maybe the secretary can correct me if I'm wrong, but they are one of the traditional groups of people who routinely get a copy of these applications. Is that correct?
Yes,
And they not only received the initial plans, they also received any of the revised plans as well.
Okay, but we don't ask them, and this is once again a procedural question, not even with this effort. We don't ask them to submit a negative comment. In other words, we just assume if they don't answer by the date that they have no comment?
Most of the departments will respond with a no comment, but we do not require it. So if you do not respond by the date that we ask, then we just assume you have that.
Okay, so there's no follow-up, basically?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Any other questions from board members? Are there any questions for this witness from the public? No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
He'll be around. We need him back.
Just for clarification, Mr. Dusenberry, I think our ordinance calls for a 15-foot buffer, the current one, about how, I know, I thank, the applicant for trying to accommodate it. What is the average buffer now on this plan, on that side?
Well, as Mr. Traeger just testified, as you come in from Claremont,
Right.
you get about 9 feet in width, going in for, I'm going to say, about 30 feet,
Okay.
40 feet, and then it expands to 15
Towards the
feet
back,
in width.
okay. It
What-
gets,
right
it
where-
gets there towards the back, basically, what you're saying.
Well, no, it gets there right up close to Claremont because it's expanded before it hits the first parallel parking space.
Okay.
All right, look, let's be honest about this. If the parking spaces were all gone, we'd have the 15 feet because we'd be able to go the full length, but that's not what we feel is the best application here because we think parking is critical to this site. It's not only what's required, but we also have a concern that we have an empty building, one space that's empty, and we've given it the office designation for calculation purposes, but I have no knowledge of what's going to come in there. And if we have reasonably good spaces that have good traffic flow, and we've tried to meet the buffer needs in some reasonable and rational fashion, we feel this makes a better application. So I'll lay it right on the table. We could give up the 5 spots, you'd have 15 feet of land that I would venture to say will never be recovered in the event there is a future need for those 5 spaces to come back.
Yeah, I want to ask this because I visited the site on a number of occasions, and the current vegetation there is in pretty, for the most part, the arborvitae.
It's awful.
It's in pretty bad shape.
It's awful.
Okay, so as part of this, I just want to get clarification. Would they be correcting any of the deficiencies in the existing buffer when they add the?
We will defer to Mr. Tenkate's recommendations.
Okay.
All right? So if he looks at an arborvitae and says, this one's reasonably healthy, you can keep it, fine. If he looks at another one and says, this one has been devastated by the deer to next to nothing, we'll replace it.
Okay.
Okay? And it may well be that arborvitae are not the best choice these days. I don't know. I mean, I like green giant arborvitae because they're deer resistant. But I'll defer to the engineers to run that course. I think it's an acceptable approach.
Well, that's been an ongoing issue in the town in general, which is why I'm bringing
Yeah.
this up, between our Shade Tree Commission, our Environmental Commission. We've had a lot of issues regarding inappropriate species, okay, being planted. I think Mr. Tenkate has probably been involved in this before.
For me, I'd plant barberry the whole length of
Yeah.
it and tell the deer to go away.
So we're trying to correct this as we get the opportunity with these newer applications.
Yeah, we have some room there, and we already, as has been testified to, the sprinkler system's already there, and we'll do what we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I would like to call Carl, AKA Carlos Cruz, our Starbucks representative.
Great.
Mr. Cruz, stay up.
Okay. Yep.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth?
I do.
State your name and your business address for the record.
It's Carlos Cruz, 710 Plaza, New York.
All right, Mr. Cruz, you are employed by Starbucks Coffee?
I am.
All right, and would you tell the board what your position is and your job responsibilities are for Starbucks?
I'm a construction project manager for Starbucks for the last 5.5 years. I supervise all of New Jersey new construction and remodels and some Manhattan projects as well.
All right, and you're fully familiar with this site?
I am.
And you visited it multiple times?
I did.
All right, and you've seen the plans that were submitted as part of this application?
I have.
In the main body of the original application?
I have.
And those plans fairly and accurately depict the proposed changes to this site for Starbucks?
They do.
All right. Let's go through some of the more specific. Oh, by the way, were you here during the testimony at the first hearing?
I was.
All right, so you heard all of Mr. Rapp's testimony.
I did.
All right, and you accepted the statements and the discussion that was offered as it impacts on Starbucks?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the building exterior. All right. The plans show an all-new facade with sconce lighting.
Correct.
All right. And we described the materials for us. Do you want me to give you the set of the plans?
No, I think I remember.
You can do this from
We
memory?
basically have a screening, a detail on the roof for all the rooftop units. We're going to utilize the existing brick with a black paint to sort of reflect the branding for Starbucks, with some wood details around the top of the building to give it a little bit more texture.
Okay, and you're proposing standard Starbucks illuminated signs on the sides of the building?
Correct, yes.
Okay, on the north side of the building, there's one that's proposed at 5 feet. 4 foot is permitted. Is 5 foot your standard size?
It is, yes, that's standard.
Okay. Do you have the ability to cut it down if the board required it?
Yes, we do.
All right. You're going to screen the rooftop equipment. Now, let's talk for a minute about the outside seating.
Okay.
Okay, you've already allowed the applicant to advise the board that the count of seats is reduced from 14 to 10. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
All right. And the outdoor seating has some lighting over it?
It does.
And you heard the testimony about the lighting? All right. And in your opinion, will that lighting be seen from the adjacent residential properties?
I don't think it will.
All right. Is that lighting in an alcove where
It
the
is.
seating is?
It's under a canopy.
Okay. Will you tell the board how you intend to handle the cleanups, I'm talking still with the outside seating, okay? Your refuse, table cleaning, how do you anticipate that's all going to work?
It's operational. They regularly go out there and clean and replace garbage if need be.
Okay, will there be cans out there?
There might be, depending on how heavily it's used, yeah.
All right. Do you expect that in some cases there may be an umbrella or two?
I don't think we'll have umbrellas in this case, but the manager might add one if the weather becomes an issue.
Okay, is it generally practiced with Starbucks outdoor seating to have music running during hours of operation outside?
We do have music running outside.
Okay, and what do you do to regulate the level of volume so that you're not going to bother the neighbors?
The speaker has a volume control on it. If somebody complains, we can reduce the volume.
All right. Do me a favor and just speak a little bit more into the microphone so everybody gets to hear you, all right?
Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about the exterior. You're proposing an 18-foot by 9-foot by 7-foot high enclosure for the dumpster.
Correct.
And Starbucks requires its own individual dumpsters so that you can regulate the refuse, the times of cleanup, the frequency and what goes in there?
We do.
All right, so you're satisfied with that location and that size?
I am.
All right. And that would house how many containers?
2 containers, 8 cubic yard containers.
And that would be one for garbage and one for recycling?
Correct.
All right. How often would they get picked up?
3 times a week, usually, depending on demand. If it gets higher, if the store gets busier, we can regulate that pretty easily.
Okay, and there's an existing flagpole, is there not?
There is.
Okay, and Starbucks is okay with taking that down and having it removed?
We are.
Okay. Now let's talk about the pylon sign. Right. It's proposed by the applicant at 25 feet total height, correct?
Correct.
All right, and the top 6 feet of it is the Starbucks branding sign.
The siren, correct.
The siren, okay.
Yep.
All right. Now that, there was a question about why it had 6,000 K white light in illumination behind it. Do you have any answer to that?
It's a standard proto. Nationally, it's used on every one of our buildings, so.
All right, in your opinion, is it exceptionally unusually bright, or it's standard for what all the Starbucks pylon signs look like?
I think it's standard. I don't think we've ever gotten a complaint about the lumens coming off the light.
Okay. Now, you know that the installation of the pylon sign is the subject matter of a variance request in this application, correct?
Correct.
Okay. From Starbucks' point of view, do you see a sign as necessary for any reasons?
I do.
And what would that be?
Visibility to the intersection, and giving customers enough time to identify the building and make a safe entry into the building. Usually that's why they're there.
All right. One might argue that everybody in the world knows how to find a Starbucks, but do you still feel the sign is necessary?
I do. It just makes things easier for the customer to identify the building and where to go in.
All right. Exterior lighting. Will your lighting, hours of lighting be in accordance with the local ordinance?
It will.
Okay, when the building or the operations are closed, the lighting will be reduced?
Correct. It's on a timer.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you also hear the testimony from Mr. Rapp that we would agree that the lights that are adjacent to the residential property on Claremont would be reduced to 3,000 K?
I did.
Do you have a problem with that?
As long as we have a safe environment for our partners and customers as they drive around, I'm okay with that. And as long as that's vetted out, I'm okay with that.
All right. So there, having said that, and I didn't know you were going to say that, would you be willing to accept the 3,000 K lighting and live with it for a while and have the ability to come back before this board or to deal with the municipal engineer if in fact there's a question as to safety?
Yes.
All right, but you're willing to start at 3,000 K and
Yes.
and live with that on the residential side?
Yes.
Okay. Back to outdoor seating. I forgot to ask you a question. This is outdoor. So what is your usual season of operation for outdoor seats?
It usually starts in spring, depending on the weather, and closes out in October. It gets a little cooler out. People don't usually go out. A little past October, we bring all the outdoor seating in and close the outdoor seating.
Okay, so then during the off-season, you'll have 40 seats inside.
We warehouse the seats. We don't put them inside the building.
Okay, so you're not going to move them indoors. You're going to stay with your 40 seats
Correct.
all the time.
Correct.
So that, in theory, in off-season would reduce the parking demand a little bit, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about how Starbucks will operate. So we've already said that the total number of seats is 40 inside and 10 outside, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What are your hours of operation going to be?
Usually from 5:30, 6 o'clock, depending on how the operators choose to open that store, but usually 5:30 to about 9 p.m.
9?
Yes.
Okay. And does that change on Sundays?
No.
Okay, so that's pretty much 5:30 to 6 a.m. to 9 at night, 7 days a week.
7 days a week, correct.
All right. What are the maximum number of employees you envision on any shift?
Usually ranges from 5 to 8, depending on demand.
Okay, and you may have 3 shifts in the day?
Possibly with part-time workers, correct.
All right, but at no time will it be more than 5 to 8 on site?
Correct.
All right. Let's talk about the trash pickup again. You said that's going to be roughly 3 times a week,
Depending on demand.
but what time of day will they come?
Off-peak, usually after 12, 4, 6, but it depends on the
All right, so
demand.
you're talking in the middle of the night before they open in the morning? So about 12 midnight? Or
No, during the day.
During the day?
During the day.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right, let's go back then. So they'll come sometime during the day,
Correct.
and it'll be 3 times a week.
3 times a week.
right, let's talk about deliveries. You've seen the new proposed loading area,
I have,
and that is immediately adjacent to the ramp that would allow deliveries to ramp up into the working portion of the building.
yes,
All right, as you come up to the top of the ramp, there's a vestibule, right?
correct.
All right, so the patron could come up and go right into the patron area, or an employee or delivery person could go straight into the back work area.
Correct.
Okay. Do you find that that location is adequate for your needs?
I do.
All right. Describe, if you will, the size of trucks that Starbucks will use for deliveries at this site?
I think it maxes out at 30 foot. It's a straight truck. It's not a tractor trailer, and we could always reduce that size to smaller if we need to. They usually stop, unload for roughly half an hour. It's a very quick turnover. They're in and out, and it's usually about 3 to 4 days a week. Again, off-peak hours.
Okay. When you say off-peak hours, would that be starting at, say, like 6:30 at night
Correct.
and later?
Correct.
Okay, so in your view, would that interfere with other uses on the site?
No.
All right. Okay, you've seen the interior floor plans that were submitted
I have.
with this. Is that an accurate reflection of what will be constructed?
It is.
All right. Is that a very typical layout for Starbucks?
It is.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Well, you can't go yet.
Okay.
Don't look at me like that. They have questions.
All right.
I have one question. The parallel parking along the buffer is, with that last month, we spoke about that being employee-only parking. Is that something Starbucks
Yes.
agreed to?
Yes. The quick turnover parking we usually allow for customers, and those aren't considered quick turnover. It has to be closer to the entry point in the building.
You might just make one comment there. I'm not sure we'd want to designate it as employee only, because if you only had 3 employee cars on site at a given time, you don't want to lose the opportunity for a patron to park there. But we will certainly, let me phrase it a little different if I may, you will encourage your employees to park in the parallel parking spaces when they first arrive.
Correct. The manager usually, sort of manages that way and keep the high turnover parking spaces more available to the customer. Yeah, correct.
Mr. Tully, in the same manner, we stopped having designated parking spaces on this site for, say, Famous Rays or for the Pompton Spa, because what happens then is you lose the interactivity of spaces for different uses that are peaking at different points in time. So same thing, we will encourage the employees and the manager to use those spaces for employee parking.
Just clarify your point, Mr. Chairman, about the, and it's probably in the paperwork here, so forgive me for asking it, but you're a representative of Starbucks. Is this going to be a Starbucks-run property, or is this going to be a franchise?
We don't have franchise.
You don't have any
They're all corporate owned. We don't call them franchises, we call them licensees, and they're usually in malls or airports or.
Okay, so this site is not going to be a
It's a
licensee?
corporate owned site, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, corporate leased site, corporate operated site.
Why I'm trying to clarify that is, if there are issues, okay, you would still be Starbucks, as the Starbucks representative, you would still be responsible for correcting anything that might come up, assuming it's approved, okay? If there was a complaint lodged by a resident, or if the township, inspectors had a problem with something you were doing, who would be responsible for responding to that or remedying it?
Well, one of our priorities is to be good neighbors, and we would absolutely respond to that. I would be involved the first year, then we have a facilities group that would be involved pretty quickly, but if there's some sort of complaint on our operation, we would remedy that pretty quickly.
Okay, and our construction department would be notified of any change in the,
If there's a change in layout,
Yeah.
or, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
We would present it, If it's a major change, we would definitely come back.
We'd have to get let's assume you might have to get a permit, or you would check in with them to see,
Correct.
if you could do it.
Absolutely. We would have that communication dialogue.
Thank you.
Good point.
I have a question. You provided testimony earlier about, or commented on the lighting in the back, and I believe your testimony was, you'd be willing to live with it as long as it's safe, or live with it and sort of see how it goes. The lighting that was initially proposed, what is that based on? Is that based on an assessment by an expert or consultant?
It would be a code compliant safety requirement for that area. If we have partners that are working or walking back there, especially the trash enclosure, we would want them to see where they're going and, make sure that there's no loitering or anything like that in the back. It's kind of, most of the operation for the store is happening in the front. So that gets to, I'm a little worried if it gets too dark, it might be a safety concern, especially for our partners. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up question for you. Don't forget, we're talking about reducing the Kelvin from 4,000 to 3,000. That's the color of light, not necessarily the intensity and brightness of the lumens, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we're talking about having a softer color, but not necessarily a darker environment.
Okay. Will there be testimony on that?
It's basically
There has
the
been
difference
already.
between
Okay.
the
The engineer
chandelier light.
talked about that last time.
I was just
format.
concerned, in light of you saying, like, in case it's safe, and then saying that normally they base it on, what's generally accepted as safe. I just want to make sure, it seems contrary to the earlier testimony. I just wanted to make sure we're clear.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, if there was any question, post-installation, we'd asked Mr. Tenkate what his opinion would be about the situation, and we might have to submit a revised lighting plan. Who knows? But at the moment, it appears from the testimony of Mr. Rapp that reducing the color of the light is not an issue, it's not a problem, and we'll do that.
What other lit lighting signage is going to be on the property? So you've mentioned the pylon, the big Starbucks. You have what's on the building itself. Is there any other illuminated signs?
Yes.
To the outside of the building, just
Yes.
you see on the plan.
On this one.
Yeah, that's a word mark on the front.
Okay, so let's just go through. We're referring
Like,
to
for
this.
instance, on that, planning that up first, you had number, I think it was 3 or 4, and had Starbucks entry signs. What is that?
Starbucks entry signs, or are you talking about directional signage?
Well,
Yeah.
that was directional
Directional
signage
signs,
on the
yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
Are those illuminated?
They are. They don't have to be, but they usually are.
And then
So
on,
that's the number 3. So number 3, you're saying check on Claremont, like illuminated signs?
This isn't a drive-through.
It's on
Let me
drawing
just check on the directional signs.
SP4 of 7.
We don't have a plan.
well, it might be on the engineering plan. Aaron, can you help us with that?
You have it there, and you have it on Pompton, and you have it on Claremont.
Is the entry sign?
Yeah, so it's number 3
It's
showing.
right here.
Yeah, it's in the pretty good that it's over there. It's showing.
Okay, that's an enter sign?
It's basically an entry sign. Right. Yeah, it's a directional sign. Telling
Are they
customers where to go,
illuminated?
where to park. If they're not familiar with the site, I mean, over time, they'll be very familiar with the site, but they might want to think it's a drive-through and go through the back, and then wrap back around. So maybe that's why that sign's there.
All right, is it illuminated?
It is illuminated. It doesn't have to be illuminated, but typically it is. Prototypically it is. Is your concern that it's too close to the neighbor?
Well, I understand on Pompton, but Claremont, I mean, anyone on Claremont is going to know Starbucks is there. That's a residential street for the most part. It's not really, you don't have anyone, it's not like a cut-through street. for
No, I know what you're
anyone
saying.
coming.
If it's an issue where you believe it's not necessary, I'll agree with you there.
Yeah, like on Claremont, I have.
Okay, so the sign on Claremont, then you'd like to not be illuminated?
Correct.
And that's okay with Starbucks?
That's absolutely okay.
Okay. Do you want to go through the other signs? I can go through a couple of them. They're on the, we have the variance request for the northerly side of the building itself on Claremont. And we also have a written Starbucks sign on the Pompton Avenue frontage on the top left. These are all shown on your plans. That's illuminated?
It is.
And
That's illuminated too. The siren is illuminated.
Okay, the
That's
siren.
a circular sign. It's called the siren.
Okay, and there's no plan, no sign proposed on the southerly side of the building or the westerly side of the building?
Correct.
Just those two signs?
Correct.
All right, plus the pylon?
Plus the pylon.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this question. If you got the pylon, would you really need the larger sign on the building?
That's branding. Yeah, we would need that. We would absolutely require that.
Okay.
And that's how we brand our buildings.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. You're looking, if I read it right, you're looking basically for a 1 foot variance from for the building signs I'm talking about.
Correct.
Now. You're looking for a 1 foot, I think our code says 4 feet, and now you're looking for 5. Have I got that right? On two sides of the building, basically?
Just one side.
Just one side?
Just one.
Along Pompton Avenue? Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Cruz, you said you were, you've been with Starbucks for over 5 years.
Right.
How many construction sites or of new builds of Starbucks have you oversaw or managed?
I always wanted to build a portfolio, but I never did. I was busy building stores. But I think close to 100 in 5.5 years.
And you said most of those are in New Jersey and Manhattan?
I have a majority, I would say 80% in New Jersey and 20% in Manhattan.
And how many of that 100 approximately have the 5 foot sign?
All of them, pretty much. I can't recall any location, unless there was some kind of variance that we didn't get, that we reduced the signs, which we did. We'll reduce the signs if we can't get the variance. I can't recall exactly which stores it was.
Okay, when you say it's 50% of the time, 30% of the time?
I would say probably less than that, probably 20% of the time we have a variance. I'm trying to think. I can't recall of any right now.
So roughly more than, roughly 80%, you say you have the standard branding sign.
Typically we go in with a full package, full branding package. We present to the town. If they have an issue with it, we'll make an adjustment if the variance isn't granted. So, I mean, we'll work with whatever is required. If there's a situation here where we have to reduce our sign for people.
You mentioned the exterior lighting is going to be on a timer. When would, how long after the closing of the operation would the lights go off?
So we would have to go out for cleaning, so it would probably be a half an hour to an hour. So let's call it 10 o'clock if we're closing the time. We can reduce that if we have to. Typically, we allow some time for the store to clean up and close up. It could be sooner than that. I mean, it could be where we manage a little bit better. It's a situation where we're not allowed to keep the lights on beyond 9. We'll prepare the operations to do that.
In view of the fact that you're asking for large signs on all sides of the building, larger than we require, do you really think you need a pylon? You had said, and I agree, that the Starbucks sign is so well known. I think you're going to be pulling possibly mostly from local areas around here. And I think that my thought is, do you really need that large pylon? And I think you should think about that.
I think if you're traveling on Bloomfield Ave and you're not on Bloomfield Ave.
No, you wouldn't see it on Bloomfield.
You would see that stuff.
No.
Not if you're driving properly. If you're paying attention to the road, you wouldn't see it.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought you could. Either way, yeah. So as a customer is approaching, they get, identification of the building, customers that aren't local, and they see it, and there's enough time, to slow down and turn into the parking lot. That's primarily the reason. It's just giving, quicker notification of where the building is. I agree with you. There's a lot.
But it's a huge sign. I mean, quicker notification. And I think to myself, once one goes to a Starbucks, one knows where it is. And I don't really know.
Local people, but there's a lot of traffic that aren't local, right?
No, see, that's where you're,
No. I live on Pumpkin Avenue. I know that street very well. I also know that turn that you're talking about where the light is going in.
Right.
Anyway, I just would like you to think about that.
To follow up on Dr. Reese's point, I've lived in Verona 1985, so close to 40 years now, and I live not far from this corner. And I traverse that intersection probably at least 5 to 6 times a week. To Dr. Reese's excellent point, you might have a problem maybe for the first 2 weeks that you're open, that, there's a Starbucks there, but once you guys are open, we're going to be stuck with your 25-foot sign aesthetically for God knows how long. You may suffer a little bit of lack of business for the first couple of weeks that you're open. When I put my GPS on in the car, 14 green things light up. I know where every Starbucks is, in a 25-mile radius. So I really think if we're going to balance this, okay, and I think that's Dr. Reese's point, I think we have to, you're really going to have to convince me, and you haven't gotten me convinced yet, that a 25-foot sign is necessary. And I think we've had situations in this general area where this board, and maybe the chairman can correct me, where we've actually had situations where we've denied. I know every application is supposed to be, on its own merits, but, I don't want to set a precedent, even though we're not setting it, by allowing a 25-foot sign. I also offer you this anecdotal information. You're going to get a lot of customers from the surrounding community, okay? 23 here, it's not most of the people who use 23 use it on a fairly consistent basis. Basically, going north to south, they're going to try to go down there to either get to 280, the main highway, or to turn onto Bloomfield Avenue, either left or right, to go east or west. So, and I think it's basically the same people, more or less, who are going to doing it. So if you're worried about picking up the casual person, I really have to weigh that against the overall, glaring 25-foot sign up there. I really don't think it's going to hurt your business. I feel free for the other board members to weigh in on this, but that's my opinion, and I think Dr. Reese and I share that.
I would also like to point out that Claremont is really, it's a very residential street as you get further down on Claremont. And I don't know, in all honesty, if the people who live on Claremont would like to see a huge pylon at the end of their street that says Starbucks. That's my thought. Other than that, I think that your proposal is very nice and really is an asset to Verona. But I would like you to just think about that.
And personally, I appreciate the accommodations you made, in revising your point.
I just want to make sure I go back, because I appreciate, everything that's been presented. So, to kind of go back to the earliest remarks, Mr. Duesenberg, and by the way, exhilarating opening statements that I watched on YouTube. It definitely made it, worth the watch.
It's the longest one I ever gave.
No, it was fantastic, and definitely made it entertaining. The opening statements you had mentioned, I thought it was said that, it was not going to be too much of an issue to drop down to the 4-foot medallion, but I guess we're still kind of pushing for the 5-foot. So that's kind of one thing that I wanted just to get back on that one. And then second, for the 25-foot pylon, was that because of if we were looking at the southwest move on Pompton going towards Bloomfield, that was the biggest area of concern?
Well, going back to Mr. Rapp's testimony, that was certainly a primary area of concern because traveling southbound on Pompton, he described the rise in the grade, and then from a far distance away, the top of the sign, in his view, would look like it was sitting on the ground. And then as you get up and over that grade that he described, the sign then gets bigger and bigger so that you can see that you need to get to the right lane, that the Starbucks is coming. To either turn into Claremont or to turn into the first entrance on the site. So that was part of his testimony, and another part of it was traveling northbound. If you were down at the MRC building at Prospect and Bluefield Avenue and looked across, you can't see the building, opposed to the Starbucks building, but you could see a pylon sign. And as you come around and up and to the left on that curve, coming up to where the new signal's going to be, it becomes more and more helpful. Because let's not forget, in the testimony, Mr. Rappis talked about the fact that the building is 30 feet set back. It's 4.5 feet lower than grade. And it makes it very difficult for passersby to see. And hearing what Mr. Ryan says and Dr. Reese, yeah, the regulars are gonna know where it is. Safety signage is really for the people who maybe aren't quite so savvy, and at the last minute they see a building sign and do a crazy Ivan on the Claremont, or to get across 2 lanes of traffic to get in. So signage it's really for the weakest link. More than it's for the strongest link.
Understood. And so we still have another discussion with the traffic component of this, right?
Yeah, well, we have our traffic engineers going to testify, but not so much on the sign itself. He's going to talk more about the signalization.
Well, yeah, I guess because that's where my area of concern is. I think with the 25-foot pylon, I think, at least if you're coming on Pompton towards Bloomfield, at least you have 2 points of entry. Let's just say pylon wasn't there. You have 2 points of entry to hit Starbucks if you miss one, whatever. I think my area of concern, and I guess my question is, when are we going to talk about this, is if you do see it coming up Bloomfield onto Pompton, you see the pylon, you don't know that Claremont's your entrance, you're going to try to make that left. And that's where I wanted just to have that discussion. I know it came up in the remarks from the town.
Left at the new signal?
No, before that. As soon as you kind of see that break in the median, and you try to cut into that. And I know it was brought up by the engineer, so that's where I want to see at which point we're going to talk about that.
Mr. Tenkate had a comment
Yeah.
in the traffic report that entrance into the site off of Pompton be further reconfigured, what we call a lamb chop or pork chop entrance, so that you have a hard right to go into it as you're traveling south of Pompton, and you must make a hard right out of it. So it's not just the signage that's dissuading people, it's also the physical structure of that entrance. And you'll hear our traffic engineer fully accept that question.
Gotcha.
Because it makes sense. Right now, we have no left turns on Pompton, all the way over on the right side of Pompton, in front of what is the automotive store on the right, the office building. It says you can't make a left over into Starbucks. It's not as effective as with the comment of making the reconfigured entrance will dissuade people from making that left turn. But again, back to your point about the traffic and the signage, we feel that in this case, unlike the Acura sign of application for a pylon, it was as a building sitting there on the knoll with its giant signs on it. This building itself is not as visible as many others would be. Traveling southbound, you have the emergency care center on the right. It's right up at the sidewalk. And the backs further, make us feel that we really need to have something out by the road. Now, you will hear us discuss that we might be able to reduce the tidal. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Thanks, Mr. Duesenberg.
I have two topics, I suppose. One actually is for Mr. Schrager again. Can you talk about street lamps and where those are located, and furthermore, the overhead wires that are at the intersection of Claremont and Pompton? Because it looks like they're going to conflict with this traffic light and possibly the pylon sign.
So on the corner of Claremont or?
Yeah, so the first question is about the street lights, like where are the street lamps there?
Yeah, I can check if they're shown on the plan. I'm not sure which poles do have the lights on them, but it's something definitely when we have the, well, that's the proposed site lighting. You're talking about existing.
Yeah, the
utility
existing,
lights up
yeah.
the road, yes.
Yeah, because obviously if there was like a street lamp there and then a
So
pylon sign in the way,
You're talking about the
pointless.
interactivity of the existing street lighting, the overhead wires, and the new proposed signals.
and
the
its impact on the building.
Might I ask you to hold that question and we'll ask the traffic engineer or the consultant? Because I think he's a little bit better
Okay,
able to handle that.
sure. So to the lighting, from a facilities standpoint, can you describe like the general illumination in here? I mean, there's not going to be like, fluorescent lights all over the place or whatever, because obviously you have a lot of storefront here, and that's going to illuminate quite a bit, even into the nighttime. Yeah, no, I mean, the general illumination on the inside.
The patio area?
No, on the inside, I mean, because you could see it.
Store, like how much illumination you
Right,
have
which-
inside the store because
Oh,
you
you're
got all
talking
that
about
glass.
interior lighting,
That's going to be
walk-in.
it's going to be a beacon of light coming from the
Right,
store.
right. And by the way, nighttime renderings are also phenomenal tools, if you ever get to that. Go ahead.
All right, good to know. I'll make a note of that. We do have shades in all the windows. We can always reduce, bring down the shades and close that part of it. I mean, it's not very bright, but, behind the engine, we have task lighting. I couldn't be able to comment on how you would probably only see it at Pompton. I don't think it's good anywhere else. We have a wall at the entry point, so the glass along the storefront, you would probably get some light coming out of there going up to Pompton.
Mhm. I mean, is it like this, or is it more muted
It's
than
not
this?
this bright.
Okay.
No, it's not this bright.
Is it typical for other Starbucks? Is it consistent with other Starbucks that
consistent with
people
it.
might have been in at nighttime?
Correct. If you go to a Starbucks, it's usually a little,
Sorry.
okay, no problem. But it's cafe lighting. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not as bright as this. It's not fluorescent at all.
Okay, and then you had testified earlier that the outdoor seating is warehoused, right?
Yeah,
So
we're removed from the site.
okay, so there's no possibility of extra chairs being brought from anywhere in the back of house or something as to,
No,
okay,
there isn't. We maintain the interior layout as the plan shows. We don't add seating.
I'm sure that
Okay.
Mr. Massaro will put a condition in any approval or to be forthcoming that the interior seating does not exceed the 40 seats that are designated on the plans.
right. I mean, I understand that all this
It's
is,
critical because parking is a function of seats.
right. I mean, my point being, all this is all well and good and conditions and everything else, and in 10 years, when nobody remembers this meeting, how is that enforced, right? So I just want to make sure that, from a facility standpoint, from a management standpoint, that that's not going to increase.
Let me ask a follow-up question. If you're showing 40 seats inside,
Correct.
do you have any room for more?
No, I was just going to respond to that. I was just going to respond to that. The design is maximized on seating. We can't put any more seating for it to operate, function. and
Right,
function.
but people, I mean, you could stand in there.
You can even stand.
Technically, it's not an assembly space, but, you could have 40 people seating plus another 20 people in the queue, right? I mean, that's,
Permitted.
what's that?
That's permitted.
Yeah, right.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
Is that-
I know Starbucks tested out having alcohol at some of the sites. Can you, I don't know if that's still going on or any intention.
I think in Chelsea, some areas, the reserve bars have them. Those are usually in Manhattan, Chicago.
Any intention on then in the future?
No. Coffee, lattes.
I have a follow-up question. Have you worked on any projects in New Jersey that don't have a pylon sign?
Usually monument sign or pylon sign is the standard. I'm trying to think if I had any that don't. Or there's a tenant sign in the center that doesn't have its own pylon sign, but we have a tenant sign.
Like in a strip mall kind of scenario?
Yeah, like if it's in a mall, usually freestanding will be representing somewhere on the road for the reason that you spoke of, just in that notification that there's a Starbucks and people aren't making crazy turns. That's primarily the reason for it.
Right, your testimony is you can't, there's no projects you've worked on that don't have a pylon
I
sign?
don't know a project where we don't have a pylon sign that I built.
That you've built, okay. Are you aware of any in New Jersey that you haven't worked on that don't have a pylon sign?
I think there are two possibly. One's on 23 up in, north on 23, like in Pompton Lakes or something like that. There's one that's there. And then the one at the Willowbrook Mall, I don't think that does, or maybe it doesn't have a drive-through or something, but yeah. You could drive around and take an inventory.
Is there a pylon in the Montclair Starbucks?
There's not.
I mean, that's just a regular store.
Yeah, on the Santa, there's no pylon sign on that. Yeah.
It's a different case if it's a freestanding building,
Correct.
which the
I was
ones,
gonna say if it's a freestanding
yeah,
building.
yeah. Yeah, but the ones on 23, go check those out.
If I may, I haven't asked two of the giant questions. Starbucks is not asking for a drive-through here, are they?
No, we're not going to.
Okay, and you won't, right?
No.
Okay, and you're not asking for curbside pickup?
No, we're not.
And you won't, correct?
We won't.
Thank you. I just realized that we've been saying that, but he didn't.
Curbside pickup that's different from mobile ordering where I could go on my phone and mobile order it and walk into the store to get it?
That's Quick Park. There's mobile order pickup where you go in, pick up your mobile order and leave. That would be Quick Park. Curbside was something we tried during the pandemic because people didn't want to get out of their cars. And we tried that for a short period of time.
Okay, I just wanted to understand the difference because I thought to myself, I wanted to know, will I be able to, yeah, okay.
We have a partner come out and deliver your car.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to have another question to clarify a comment that Mr. Dusenberry made about the signage on the building, okay? I'm looking at a picture that the applicant represented here. Now, while there's technically not the big circular sign on both sides of the building, it does clearly in big letters say Starbucks on the pump. Is that still the intended?
That's the intent, right there.
Okay. So Starbucks is going to be identified on two sides of the building in one way or another, either with the green thing if we approve the variance for the, that's what the variance is about, the size of that sign, correct? The lettering conforms to our existing, so there's no variance needed for that.
No.
But to my point, you still say Starbucks on both sides of the building, in one way or another, correct?
Well.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
People read, yes,
Okay.
Well,
but everybody knows the siren.
I just want to make sure though, because again, in the exhilarating opening remarks, we're willing to make these, what my esteemed colleague made as conditions of our approval, the no drive-through for the life therein.
Absolutely, this is critical.
And the no mobile, and the no curbside pickup as a condition. So I just want to make sure that, being presented, being reaffirmed, that we are just kind of noting that.
Well, just to be clear, that's not part of their application.
I know,
so
but I'm
it wouldn't
saying
be-
like, I
it
just want to
wouldn't
make
be
sure
a
that it was
condition.
repeated.
It wouldn't be a condition. It would
Okay.
just be, that's just part of their testimony.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to make sure that it was noted.
Condition that there be no drive-through request. I mean, it's
I just wanted to highlight
But that's not
the
what your
fantastic opening
application
remarks.
is. You're currently presenting this, right?
It's absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's not redundant at all, but
Yeah,
it's not necessary.
okay,
It's not part of the application. And you cannot put a restriction that they can never come back to make an application for a drive-through.
gotcha. Okay,
No, but couldn't we place a condition if for some reason next month they decided they're going to, on a corporate level, try curbside pickup all over again? There would be nothing to prevent them from doing that unless we put a condition saying, well, then they have to come back.
They have to come back to try, but you cannot put conditions in an approval that that are not part of the application.
It's like how far does it go?
So, which is as good as the condition. You can't do it, but you can never prevent somebody from making an application.
You can't anticipate that. You can memorialize in the resolution, though, that there is no request for drive-through in this application as a finding of fact, and then you've covered it both ways.
And you can still come back next month.
Yeah. Well, take a 6-month plan.
Okay, are there any other questions from board members?
Yeah, what is a new meal canopy? Number 8 on your drawings, on your elevations?
What is it called?
Oh. So what is the metal canopy? And what does that affect?
We have a metal canopy here.
So what exists now? Is this a drive-through?
Is not
What page are you looking at?
3? Three. Page 3, and it's listed as number 8. On mine, it says new meal canopy, but obviously that's a typo for new metal canopy.
Good catch. So probably, no, it's actually over here, so I think it's an old carryover from when we stored it back. The egress, that's probably the one that we have.
That's the backside.
That's the backside. It's just a carryover. There's no canopy there. And we don't have a metal canopy on the building. We do not have a metal canopy on the building. That's a good catch, yeah. I was like, are we doing something new? I wasn't aware of.
And I know there was testimony before about mechanical equipment screens. You could see it in these renderings, so they're just a black horizontal screening.
Correct.
Are there any additional units that are anticipated to go up there or anything?
We're
or-
going to utilize the existing, there are going to be 2 units. Any penetration from the roof is coming through that canopy, so you wouldn't be seeing anything outside I'm sorry.
The screen.
The screen is what I mean.
Using the existing HVAC system.
The existing location.
Yeah, on location.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Cruz from the board at this time? Okay, is there any member from the public who has a question for this witness? Please come up to the microphone and state your name.
Hi, is it working?
You can take it out, it makes you work.
No, I'll start singing. I'm Lauren Yannon. I live, I don't even know if I need this. I live right off of Claremont on Montclair. Some questions are pest control. I don't know if you're able to speak to that, but there have already been rats on my street. So what is the approach there? I know that that may not be, since you're not day-to-day management.
Rats.
Can I just interrupt you for a minute? Would you spell your name for us?
Yeah, Yannnon. Not from the press, just a resident. First name is Lauren.
Thank you. I'm sorry, please continue.
So we do have a pest control system in place throughout the site and inside the building.
Okay, and what does that consist of? Like what toxins are?
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Can you ignite that?
I can't speak to the toxins they use. I don't think they use toxic material, but I can get you a management program on what that looks like and share that with the board if needed.
Thank you. You mentioned part-time and full-time employees. Do you know if the partners will be mostly full-time employees who are benefits eligible, or if they will be part-time employees who do not have benefits, therefore are at a disadvantage.
I can't speak to the percentages, but I think they're mostly full-time employees with, I can't speak to the percentages on part-time, but we do have some part-time employees that are there.
Are there any plans for Starbucks to compost?
We do compost. We compost the coffee grounds.
Okay, what about the food scraps?
We don't usually have food scraps, but we compost the food. Yeah, just the coffee grounds is usually our compost material.
Okay, so I've supported food and beverage for the majority of my career, and many companies now have different bins for composting, for recycling, for just regular trash. Would Starbucks consider moving towards that?
So we have a recycling bin, we have a trash bin, and we have the compost would be the coffee grounds that
But
we have in
not
the bag.
food scraps, so not like sausage, egg, and cheese food scrap?
We typically don't have that as, yeah.
6 p.m. for later delivery, so what is later?
Usually before 9 o'clock, before we close.
Okay. Why wouldn't we remove the flagpole? Is that like in way of parking?
What's the question?
Why would we remove the flagpole?
Is that in way of parking? Can we not put up the flag?
No reason, really.
Okay, just doesn't go with branding, I guess. And then, sorry to bring this up one more time, but I promise it's not about the sign, so I'll take a breath of relief. How many parking spaces are there again? The second most popular topic, and it doesn't include the parking spaces in Acura that are not actually accessible.
70.
70 in that lot. Okay, and then again, I apologize, you may not be the person to ask. And I'll happily accept that, but maybe at some point someone can clarify to this, but as a mother of a young daughter in the school system here, will Starbucks be supporting town concerts, summer in the park, Little Leagues, Girl Scout troops? Like, how is this benefiting my family?
I can't speak to exactly what that is, but we do, we're part of the community and we're involved in the community. So I would say in some form we will be involved. And that would be through the district manager and the store manager on site.
Okay, with all respect, you didn't even think that people from this town and community would be using this. This was passed by traffic, so I'm not sure that you're actually part of our community, but I really appreciate you taking my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you clarify about the composting? I mean, do you have like a bin in the back, or does somebody come and get
It's
it?
in the trash enclosure. There are 2 bins in the trash enclosure that are compost
Okay.
bins.
I'm sorry, I just, for clarification, to use one of your words. You had said there were 2 bins, I thought, before in the enclosure.
2 dumpster bins. These are small garbage cans, pretty much.
Okay, so the 2 dumpster bins plus
Yeah.
miscellaneous bins.
Well, they're garbage cans, for lack of a better term, and they just hold the compost, which is picked up as well.
And to follow up on the lady's point, Starbucks, it usually join the Chamber of Commerce if they exist in the towns where they have a facility. Would you be able to address that question?
I can't, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Going back to the composting, I know with restaurants, well, my experience at the city, you have to refrigerate your waste because you can't put waste outdoors. That's still like a food waste because that's what does attract pests. So I know whenever we have a restaurant, we have to have a plan for refrigerating that type of trash.
So typically, we don't refrigerate our trash, but we don't have food disposal usually. The food is usually purchased and removed from site, not usually disposed in our store. So that's why when I was making that comment, with the food, it's usually just garbage, cardboard, just that type of trash, not food. And we don't cook on site. Everything's baked on site and packaged. So, I don't know, does that answer your question?
I'm not sure how that falls, because I don't know how it is in New Jersey, so I know in New York you have to refrigerate your food waste.
They would have to follow the Board of Health.
Yeah, it's, correct.
Are there any other members of the public who have a question for this witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dusenberry, would it be okay if we take about a 5-minute break before the... Great. So we will return just after 9 p.m.
An all day supper, as they say.
Oh, my.
We're gonna take
I guess I want to use, I'm really trying to work hard here.
Is this mine or is this yours?
It doesn't matter. You can have
I'm wonderful. Oh,
What did you eat on the lunch? I think I actually. I didn't see that.
He's trying to get across. Trust me.
We're gonna start back up.
All right, Mr. Dusenberry, would you like to?
I would like to get on with Mr. John Jar of Brightview Engineering. Mr. Jar, if you'd stand up and raise your right hand.
Mr. Jar, you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your name and business address for the record, please.
My name is John Jar. I'm with Brightview Engineering, 70 South Orange Avenue, Livingston, New Jersey.
Thank you.
To give the board the benefit of my experience credentials, I've been a traffic consultant for over 32 years. I've served over 100 boards as their consultant. I have served, I've testified more times than I remember.
License is in good standing?
All my credentials are in good standing.
Okay, we could accept you as a traffic expert.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you also at one point were employed by the the Township of Verona, were you not?
Yes.
Was it for traffic consulting services?
Yes.
That is why.
But you don't have,
That's a traffic
but you don't have a
expert.
conflict today?
No, there are no
Okay,
conflicts.
all right. All right, Mr. Jar, you were retained by the client to design and process an approval for a traffic signal at the intersection of Pompton and Claremont, were you not?
Yes, sir.
And about how long ago did that process start? And will you describe for the board a little bit about the history of the signal itself?
I was still on the council at that point, and I had been off of it for 3 years before that.
And Mr. Ryan, so I can poke you a little bit, it was 2020, you voted affirmatively on that resolution.
You do your homework.
Yeah.
So, as my colleague asserts here, the project of getting the traffic light approved at that location has been about a 4.5-year process. It's involved every department in the town of Verona, the manager's office, the police department, the fire department. Everybody at some point or other has had some involvement in trying to put a traffic light here. As you may or may not all be familiar, that little section of Route 23, which is fully under county jurisdiction, it does have its fair share of accidents, it has had its fair share of challenges. So long ago, when I was actually working here with the town as the town traffic consultant, we were very supportive of finding some solutions to not just the accident problems, but the other circulation issues that are happening between Claremont and the Bloomfield Avenue intersection. So ultimately, the answer actually came out of the woodwork, and the folks who are applying for the Starbucks had come to the town and asked, had no application in front of us. They just simply come to the town and said, we want to put a traffic light there. We can prove that it's, if it warrants, the town will be on board with it. So they went through the process. To Ms. DeBartolo's question, very challenging project board, okay? Because NJDOT has jurisdiction just outside of the curve return of the intersection. So this had to go through the most rigorous process of review. It had to be reviewed by the state, by the county, and then of course then at the town. So when you do a state traffic light, there's a lot more attention to the details, like making sure there's no conflicts with overhead wires. Part of the plan set that was prepared for the intersection has a giant plan showing all the overhead wires and showing that the lights aren't going to have any conflicts and that you can see the traffic signals and there'll be no conflicts. Another part is a state light. Unlike county lights and local lights, state requires minimum lighting levels to be at a signal. So at this traffic signal, the combination of both light fixtures on the signal itself and supplemental light at the utility poles, the intersection will be lit, all right, better than it is today, and it will meet state standards. So a lot more rigorous review, a lot more involvement, and then of course, because the county owns the majority of the jurisdiction, and the review process with the county, and we kind of were a party to the process of getting the light just for the mere sake that we have jurisdiction of the roads, so we have to be in agreement with it. So Verona's okay with the light, but ultimately the county's really going to run this. The signal itself is actually going to get built to county standards with county equipment. Originally, it was going to be built with state equipment, but then after the state realized that they're not going to maintain the light, the county is, they stepped aside and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and let, because Essex County is going to be really running, driving the ship on this, we will acquiesce, we'll let you guys build all county equipment. So the conduit, everything is done for county standard. And we've had county review as well. We have a state inspector that looks at it, we also have a county inspector that looks at it. So quite a lot of bureaucracy. Traffic lights have a lot of bureaucracy to begin with because they're you have to meet federal standards. The warrants that are required for a signal are in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD for short, and that's a federal standard. So I think that covers the light in general.
In general, it does. So let's just get back into some of the weeds a little bit. You say that Verona adopted an ordinance. Would that have been in 2020, September 21st?
That sounds correct.
All right, and that was an ordinance endorsing the need for a signal at this intersection, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And did there come a point in March of 2023 that the engineering manager in Verona approved the submitted plans?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And then subsequently, the NJDOT issued its permit. Would that have been on May 5th of 2023?
That sounds correct as well.
Okay, and then the revised plans were approved October 20th of 2023?
Correct.
Okay, those are all facts that you're acutely aware of?
Very.
Okay, and then immediately thereafter, construction commenced?
Correct.
All right, and there was a need to commence construction to basically vest rights in the applicant to put the signal in, correct?
Correct.
All right, and as I understand it, the footings were installed?
The entire signal underground is now complete. All the footings, foundations, conduits, and even some of the wiring is already been put in place.
Okay, and that goes to a central control?
Correct. The control
Location?
cabinet is actually on the corner where the Starbucks is going to be.
All right, so what is holding up the completion of the project?
The equipment for the signal was ordered on November the 27th, 2023. We have been quoted 50 to 60 weeks to get signal equipment. It has been an absolute nightmare, not just for the job here in Verona, but multiple other signal jobs I'm working on in New Jersey. Signal equipment, due to COVID, there's a limited number of manufacturers, so I have been sending a monthly update to the assistant town manager and the chief of police, advising them of how we're proceeding on with getting equipment. Right now, we are hoping to have a confirmed delivery date around Christmas. Yes, it is absurd, and this is not the only place I'm having that problem. And quite honestly, that's my main business, is doing traffic lights. So just imagine what a challenge it's been for us. I have 7 halfway built traffic lights that I can't get equipment for. It's very, very challenging.
All right, have you been trying to swap equipment and make deals with people to get the signals?
Right. Well, in this case, we happen to have a private entity paying for the light. So we've been able, I can't do that when we're government jobs. For example, we're going to put a new traffic light in Bloomfield at the loop underneath the parkway. Okay? It's a government job. I have no ability to make any deals. With this developer, these folks having to be a private entity, we've gone out in the market and we've tried to find other ways to get it. We probably have shaved a few weeks off getting the equipment to try and throw money at it. And that ultimately, if they can't deliver all the equipment at the same time, then paying an extra $10,000 to get 2 of the poles in arms sooner is not worth it.
Okay. Is it fair to say that this is an independent project from the site plan that's before the board this evening?
Absolutely. This project has been bonded with the state of New Jersey, and like it or not, it's getting built. If this application were to die right now, and this light is getting done.
So the applicants have provided performance and payment bonds?
Yep.
All right, and all of the other documentation has been approved, obviously it needed to be to start the construction.
They are obligated with the state of New Jersey to finish this traffic light. They are bonded in full payment for it.
Okay, so let me understand the jurisdiction. The box is county jurisdiction.
Correct.
All right. The Claremont sides of it are town jurisdiction.
Correct.
The island in the triangle at Bloomfield Avenue and Pompton is Verona.
Correct.
The Bloomfield and Pompton Avenues are county roads. And the state jurisdiction starts at the northerly edge of the box on Route 23 where it heads out to Cedar Grove.
It would be very helpful if we could share this with the board.
Okay.
Can we?
Sure. All right. What do you have here for the board? Let's
You have to mark this.
Okay.
So you have the original one here for you. All right. This is the final NJDOT jurisdictional plan for the intersection of Claremont Avenue and Pompton Avenue.
All right. And this was prepared by who?
Prepared by House Simoff Associates. And this is part of the final signal approval package that was approved by the state.
What's the date?
Is there a date on it?
I think there is a date on it.
Yeah.
Good luck reading it, though. Looks like 12. Can you read that? Somebody has to have better eyes than us. How about, we're going to say 12/2023. All right, for the best of my ability, I believe this was prepared right before we got the final plan approval. Or shortly thereafter the final plan approval. So we're very, very close on the date. So we'll say December of 2023.
Kathleen's going to come and take those from you.
I believe there should be enough for everybody.
I think that should be A4.
A4, correct.
Mr. Tenkate's office had asked about this already. We had sent these to Mr. Tenkate's office as well.
All right, so just for clarity, there's actually no state frontage on this site, is there?
Correct. All the frontage is county.
Okay, so the start of Route 23 is a highway in its state jurisdiction is what gives it the nexus to the intersection and this signal.
Correct. They're the highest jurisdiction, so they have to prove it.
Because they're part of it.
Yep. So if the board would notice, the yellow area is the state jurisdiction, and it actually begins right at the curb return. All right, so the curb return is where the curve goes from a curve to a straight line. Okay, so we start just after they make the curve, and that's where the state jurisdiction begins. But because you have state jurisdiction involved here, they have to be, they're the highest law of the land, so they have to review this and approve it.
And they've approved it and issued all the warrants that you need, and that's why you started construction, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, let's talk about the general issue of Bloomfield Avenue, its signals, and the proposed new signal. Well, it's not proposed, it's going to happen, all right? Who's going to have jurisdiction over coordinating them?
Essex County.
So how does that work? The county will come in and their engineers will look at the traffic work that went into the warrants and all the approvals?
Correct. The county has already had to approve this. In order for us to construct this light, the state required written approval from Essex County.
All right, and that's obviously been forthcoming. So what does the county do? You build the light, they come in and they set the timers? How does that work?
Okay, so the plans are prepared by Mr. Simoff's office that call for these lights to be coordinated. So this traffic light will have a radio interconnect to the light at Bloomfield Avenue. So this light will be working in harmony with the county's light at Bloomfield Avenue. Remember, the county has ultimate jurisdiction over this. So they're going to adjust things and do whatever they want. At the end of the day, once we're done building the traffic light, as the light's been built, both the county and state have been out doing inspections, and the process continues.
Okay. So basically, once it's built and the ship sailed from the applicant's purse,
Correct.
the applicant has no more say about it.
Correct. Actually, the applicant has little say in making too many changes at this point, because the state and county have already approved it. So what the plans are and what's baked is already baked.
Okay.
The timing's been approved, the connections have been approved, and it's now just a process of having state inspectors and county inspectors agree that the construction's done per the approved plans.
Okay. Shifting to the site itself a little bit. Traffic is an issue. You've looked at the on-site circulation?
Yes, sir.
And you find that that's adequate?
I believe this site will work safely and efficiently.
Okay. You've also seen Mr. Tenkate's comment in his more recent traffic update about doing what some people have described to me as the pork chop reconfiguration of the Pompton Avenue upper entrance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you confident that that can be redesigned to ensure angled turns in and angled turns out?
Yes.
At that location?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you can work with your engineers, Mr. Rapp, Mr. Schrager, and Mr. Tenkate to see that that's appropriately redesigned?
Yes, sir.
And you think that that will be helpful in addition to the no left turn signs that are out on Pompton to dissuade people from making an improper left turn as they travel northbound on Pompton so they don't try and make a left where the barrier is no longer separating the lanes of travel?
Correct. Yes, sir.
All right. For somebody to do that, they'd have to go through 3 lanes of travel to try and get in that part of the site anyhow, wouldn't they?
Correct.
All right. In your opinion, will the traffic signal there make it more attractive for people to go up to the signal rather than try and make an illegal left turn?
Yes, because we're going to have a left turn arrow, we're going to have a leading left arrow on Route 23 in that direction. So it should be very enticing for drivers to do the right thing.
Okay.
Because we're going to have that left turn arrow to hopefully draw them up to the right location.
Okay. So there'll still be 2 lanes of travel heading northbound towards Cedar Grove.
Yep.
At the intersection, but when the signal changes, there will be a left turn arrow?
Yes, sir.
All right, so cars in that lane will be able to go left or straight.
Correct.
The right lane will obviously go straight because you can't make a right, well, actually you can't make a right turn on Claremont there, can it? It's not one way there, so a car couldn't make a right turn if the light did.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Dusenberry, just from my
Interrupt me anytime.
so we're basically addressing in Mr. Tenkate's last memo, points 10, 11, and 12. Am I sort of on mark on that?
Please don't, Mr. Ryan.
Are you talking about his August 5th letter?
Yes, the June 27th one, I see. I have.
No, actually,
There's another one after that?
There's
Okay.
been an updated one that really focuses on a
Okay,
lot of points that
I'm
are.
glad I asked to make sure I got the right one. Thank you.
It would be the very last point at the end of his letter, where he says, as a minimum, we recommend the driveway should be physically reconfigured for right turn in and out only. Do you 100% agree with that?
Okay, I have the right memo. Okay, so it is item 10 and 11 on the new memo.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about the updated traffic memo for a minute. As I read this, and I'm more of a layperson than an expert on understanding this, the sense I get from the letter is that most of the back and forth is dealing with software tweaking or proper settings in the software that traffic consultants and engineers use in evaluating these kinds of intersections. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay, so whether the memo is accurate or not, or without getting into who has which settings, don't all of these issues deal with the relationship between the new signal and the Bloomfield Avenue signal?
Yes.
Right. Aren't all of those things really the subject of county review and approval?
Yes, they are.
Right. So were you to do any post-installation of that signal analysis, for example, would it fall on deaf ears at the county?
It would be at the county's discretion whether they want to make any changes.
All right. Does the county or the state, do either of them require any post-installation analysis of that intersection?
No, they have not.
All right. So in your view, is it a proper request to do a post-analysis investigation of this signal from within the purview of this approval or Verona's jurisdiction?
You're going to hate me for this, but I totally didn't understand your question.
You know, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
I won't hate you for that. It just might be me.
I'm probably supposed to know the answer to that, but
Well,
maybe he broke it the smaller
okay,
bites.
let me put it in a more simple way. Does whatever the Verona Engineering Department request for general signal coordination or the tweaking of these things in the review, does it have any jurisdiction over what the county does?
No, ultimately no. But should we build everything and everything get finished here and something not work right, the procedure would be the same no matter how we handle it here. The procedure is going to be the same. The town, or you could ask the applicant, because I'd be happy to do it. All right, and simply go to the county and say, hey, we put the light in the way you told us to. We built it, we did the timing, we did what the state did, we said, you know, something still isn't working right. Can you go out and look at it? And they will. All right, because I work for the county, I do that too. So, but at the end of the day, the honest truth is trying to do anything about it now wouldn't be very productive, because ultimately, you know, should we encounter problems later on, we're going to have to go to the county anyway. So it would be my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do something now. It makes much more sense to get the light in, see how it's working. If we run into a problem, we're going to go to the county and get them to help us.
Mr. Jarrah, if, as I mentioned before, I've been in and out of this project for 4 or 5 years, and I've had numerous discussions both on the council and when I saw this application with Chief Kiernan, okay? Wouldn't it be fair to say that even though the town that technically doesn't have the ultimate say, wouldn't the county play, if the chief of police from Verona went to the county and said, we're having a difficulty, you know, with this new light installation, in your experience, wouldn't the county take that kind of a recommendation seriously and come out and look at it?
And they'd be out within 3 days to look at it, guaranteed.
Okay.
They're very responsive to that one.
So in your opinion, So this traffic light has major impact on local traffic. Starbucks also has major impact on local traffic. So to do these two projects concurrently, do you think that that's a smart idea? Or should they evaluate the traffic light first?
No, the traffic light, the Starbucks traffic is insignificant to what's on Route 23. Remember, you're talking about the coffee shop, right? Route 23 probably has over 10,000 ADT. I mean, the coffee shop is 100 cars or something. There's no comparison between the two. The traffic light is being put there to cause a significant improvement to the 10,000 car issue. The Starbucks is so insignificant compared to what's on, I mean, for Broomfield and 23, probably each handle over 20,000 ADT a day. The volumes there are 5 lanes. I mean, the part that comes down from Verona, you know, Cedar Grove to Broomfield, it's 5 lanes. Broomfield Avenue, that location is 5 or 6 lanes. I forget how many. It's two totally, yeah, the Starbucks is insignificant.
Tell us about the benefits of the new signal for the site. All right, but you already talked about one. Well, the first one was you're going to have a northbound Compton Avenue left turn lane.
Yeah, the big help for whatever goes here, whether it's a Starbucks or a bank or whatever, is getting that left turn lane in. Okay, getting that left turn arrow and getting drivers to be able to safely and efficiently make a left turn from 23 onto Claremont Avenue is that the chief of police and I have spent hours out there watching utter chaos. Okay, having this traffic light will be a significant quality of life improvement for everybody that drives through that intersection.
In the course of your work here, did you look at accident reports for this intersection? And what did you find?
There's a lot. There's a significant number of accidents in this area.
All right, are there a fair number that were trying to make left turns out of westbound Claremont?
Absolutely.
I noticed on one of the reports that many of the accidents were T-bones.
Correct.
Right. I also noticed that some of them were side swept. Right, and some of them were rear end. Is that correct?
Rear end accidents are typically caused because of traffic light.
All right. Now, having signal here, in your opinion, will that prevent people from blocking the box? Or less likely to block the box than they would presently?
Because of the interconnect between the lights, it's going to help so that we don't have that problem.
All right, and this will now improve left turns out of Claremont heading towards Cedar Grove.
Yes, it will.
I'm going to throw another thing in here. I didn't think I saw it in your report, but my memory serves me when we, on the council, when we pushed to get the light put in there, we also felt tangentially it would relieve some of the traffic on Linden Avenue going towards Pompton, because many people, to avoid Claremont, okay, would go up to Linden because there's a traffic signal there. So it actually, me being in the position where I live uniquely in the middle of both of them, I don't know whether you ever referenced that in the report or if the state considered that it would also, to me, even out the distribution of traffic on Linden and on Claremont.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Work council.
No work council.
You kind of get stuck in that, you know?
Okay, as far as on-site is concerned, is there adequate turning room for emergency vehicles?
Yes, the site circulation works fine. And to answer the question, they had a fire over there. They were taking the safe out of the building. So I happened to be visiting with the chief on another matter. And so I came out to the site. So just so you guys know how it worked. They had a fire in the building. The fire truck came. They closed the right lane on Route 23. The fire truck did not go onto the site. The fire truck stayed out on the highway, and they fought the fire from the highway. The fire trucks don't like to go by buildings that are on fire, or the chance that because things can explode and terrible things can happen. So the site is never going to have to accommodate the fire truck. The site itself will circulate, delivery vehicles and everything, and an ambulance if need be.
Okay. Will the light provide better gaps for cars to exit the site onto Pompton Avenue?
For the right turn, right in the driveway?
Yeah.
Yes, and it doesn't matter. because the driveway is right in between the two lights. There's a very short distance between the two, and typically the traffic backs up from Bloomfield Avenue, up into the vicinity or past our driveway.
So you're just going to get out as you can?
Correct. It's going to operate very much the way that it does today, just based on Mr. Kincaid's direction, which we do agree with, by putting a concrete island in and a barrier so people cannot make a left in from 23. That will be a significant safety improvement to prohibit people from trying to do that.
Wouldn't the light also prevent people from blocking the box at that intersection? I mean, that is a chronic problem, once again, during morning and evening rush hours. I'm sort of an amateur traffic expert on this intersection. I use it quite often. And the idea that the light would at least tell people, I've got to stop at Claremont and Pompton, and I can't just roll into the section of Pompton that's going to block Claremont from moving. Now, that's not to say people won't attempt to do that, but once again, that's something where we have to get our local traffic enforcement to keep an eye on that, at least at that point in time, you have a fighting chance of getting, out of Claremont Avenue and making a right turn or even a left turn, which is now prohibited from what I understand. I think it's 4 to 7 on Claremont. You can't make a left turn onto Pompton, and I believe in the morning it's also prohibited. So I'm assuming, maybe incorrectly, once the light goes in, those signs should come down, correct?
Yeah, once we put the traffic light, all the signage is going to be redone, new striping, it's going to be a nice improvement.
Okay. Thank you.
Quite honestly, switch seats for a little bit here, because you're spot on. You're Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Ryan, will you raise your right hand?
I'm a little awkward here because I wasn't, and I'm not going to recuse myself because I firmly believe that the light is totally separate from this application. I'm talking about the light itself and the rationale for why the council pushed to get it put in. And once again, I will use clarification, but for edification of anybody who watches this, I think they should know the history of how long this thing has been going on. And the council and the local officials fervently supported it during that time. And I have heard nothing subsequent to that to indicate that anybody in the current administration has changed their mind on it.
John, yes, thank you. Eastbound Claremont Avenue, lights red, there's a queue, people making a left off of Pompton wanting to go into the Starbucks. Is there conflict there?
There should be enough room. Because the traffic volumes on Claremont coming out are not that robust. All right, what it is because it's so hard to get out of Claremont Avenue. Claremont Avenue doesn't really serve a huge population, okay? Because it's really hard to get out there, the volumes aren't that bad. There should be adequate queuing space required, and the light will cycle enough to get everybody through.
So that's a level A?
It's got really good levels of service.
Okay.
We'll not see too much trouble.
Okay.
From time to time, I'm sure the Starbucks driveway will have to wait, because obviously the Claremont gets the right of way.
Okay.
So may I ask a question? So it's your suggestion or recommendation that if one is traveling north on 23 Pompton Avenue, gets to the light at Claremont and Pompton Avenue, wants to go into Starbucks, that person will then take a left on Claremont and go into the driveway on Claremont, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what about going south on Pompton Avenue? Is there another entrance that will enable them to just zip into?
They'll have two opportunities. They'll be able to either make right of the light, or they can go into the right in, right out driveway. That's just past. I suspect, depending on how you guys go with the signage, that the right in, the driveways a little further down past the light will get a good amount of the right turn vehicles in. I think people are not going to want to turn at the light at Pompton because when you're coming up the hill, that's an uphill, there's sight distance issues. So I think that it's going to, anybody that knows the area, they're going to know where to go. And they're going to just go use the right and right out driveway because it's easier to get into that than anything. all right? But folks who aren't familiar with the area, yeah, they're gonna get up there and they're gonna have no other choice but to use right-hand drive driving because they're gonna drive right past the traffic light, not knowing that there's Starbucks going that way.
If you're going east on Claremont, coming up to the light, are you going to be able to make a right on red?
Right now, there are, yeah, good question. Right now, there are no right on red prohibitions proposed at the light. Chief and I have talked about it, it's something we're gonna watch. If we need to do it, county, we've already discussed it with the county, if need be, we can always implement it. Good question. I guess what is, like, is the next thing? The chief of police and I have spent so much time that we actually were out there one day where somebody made an illegal left turn into the right and right out front, which is why I agree with Mr. Tenkate with this comment. We really need to do something about this, right? So the chief and I are standing there, and somebody right in front of us goes, like, he just can't do money for this.
Well, so to piggyback off of that, even if there was a pork chop in the road or whatever you call it, have you ever considered extending that street curb? Like, it just shows like there's some striping that the curb kind of transitions to a double yellow line. What if you actually put a curb there?
We're gonna work with Mr. Tenkate's office to get that driveway to be.
No, she's talking about the center line between travel ways on Pompton, extended up from the Bloomfield Avenue terminus up towards Claremont, so that somebody physically can't make the left. In the same way they can't make the left into the famous Ray's lower parking lot.
You're talking the center line, the road here? That you're talking about? Well, it's a double yellow line, and there's significant, well, not significant, there's the required amount of no left turn signs put up there. As far as, extending the barrier, that would be something that the county, would
Might not be a bad
look at,
idea.
but it really isn't enough right of way to do that. The problem is, once you start incorporating concrete barriers in the middle of the road, they have spacing criteria you have to meet. And my understanding is these folks that are applying for Starbucks have already, for $1, dedicated like 12 feet of their property. So the last county improvement project, they, for $1, donated the frontage of the property to add the right turn lane. What it is, we have some challenges with right of way out here. So it might be very difficult to do that.
I mean, even if it's just a curb, it doesn't have to be anything of significance.
See, the problem is that once you start incorporating things into the middle of the road, you have very strict guidelines you have to go by with regard to spacings and whatnot. So even though, from your or my point of view, it's only 1 foot of concrete curb, the FHWA feels differently. All right, they say if you're going to do that, then you need to have at least a 1 foot shoulder on both sides, and things will start growing from there. So, my guess is right now the concrete separation goes as far as the county felt comfortable they can go with.
Is this traffic light going to have an impact on how fast traffic moves? So if traffic moves a certain speed now, once the traffic light goes in, I assume it's going to be red a certain number of times when you're traveling down Route 23, right, Pompton. Is this going to affect the speed? Is traffic going to essentially slow there?
I think that we have to look at it from an approach basis. If you're heading towards Cedar Grove, okay, most likely it's going to slow traffic down a little bit. Okay, if you're heading from Cedar Grove because you're coming up the rise, okay, it's going to have a little or no effect because you're coming to you're basically coming to Bloomfield Avenue. And I don't know about you, but every time I go there, it's red. So, so I said, and because of the short distance between the two, I think it's going to have little effect. With a little luck, the radio interconnect will help us to get the cars through better. Maybe, hopefully faster. Things don't really go too fast in that little section.
Will there be, but there will be times where there are cars stopped at the intersection of Claremont and Pompton.
Yes.
Was the objective of this traffic light to just a safety concern, or was it to engineer traffic?
Well, I live there, but it is primarily safety. I think
It's both, really. I mean, you can't separate them.
Well, no, but I mean, you put up a stop sign, put up a red light or something, that's going to potentially cause more traffic.
But just remember, the signal also gives us the ability to get that left turn arrow to more safely and efficiently accommodate the movements, right? I mean, like I said, well, you do, change it to a multi-way stopper, something along those lines, which could be done. The county would be in favor of that, though. Obviously, for county road, they don't favor putting stop signs on county roads. So that's not really much of an option. But the number one reason is safety, right? This will have a significant reduction in the accidents, and will have a significant improvement in drivability of that small area between lanes.
What hasn't been mentioned, it will also offer pedestrian safety for people who live on the other side of Pompton Avenue, who are really, in essence, cut off from the town in many ways. For them to be able to cross the street now, they have to go all the way up to Linden to safely up to Linden, where there's a traffic light, or go all the way down to Bloomfield Avenue and try to figure out how that works, God help them. Basically, people now, and I think Mr. Tenkate in one of his reports mentioned bus stops, a very good observation. But this way, if somebody wants to go northbound on Pompton, if they were going over to Claremont, they'd have to take their life into their hands to run across Pompton to get to the bus stop. Now, at least they can wait for the light to change, and hopefully they can cross over and not have to, experience a cardiac arrest in order to get to the bus stop. So that was also a prime factor when the council discussed putting the traffic light in. It's pedestrian safety as well as traffic flow.
There will be new crosswalks with pedestrian heads, and I totally stumbled into this one. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's either a blind or a disabled person that uses the intersection, and by total luck, I insisted on having the newest form guides. And the state is not quite got to the place where they use the newest buttons. So we're going to have tactile talking buttons at this intersection, which are the most up-to-date, newest things. The only way I was able to get that done was because the county was okay with it. The state did not want to do that because they haven't incorporated that. But because we changed the county equipment, I was able to upgrade that. I recently sent that information over to the chief because one of our residents had inquired as to how we were going to be accommodating the disabled folks there.
Does that beep? Does that beep
No,
like
it
the
doesn't
last
beep, it
10
talks.
seconds or something?
You press the button, it says to talk the road, wait, it'll say wait until the pedestrian head comes up, that's okay to walk, and then it says walk, and then when the countdown timer comes, it says 10, 9, 8, it talks to you. It's very, it's a wonderful thing for people with disabilities.
Yeah, because the one at Lakeside and Bloomfield Ave does not have that, and I do have a friend who can't cross
And
there.
what's really great about the buttons we spec on this is they actually adjust with the ambient noise. So if there's a lot of traffic, a lot of noise, the button talks louder, and when it's at night, when there's not so much traffic, not so much noise, it's softer.
So the concern I heard before from the applicant about needing to have this pylon sign is that people are traveling at high rates of speed and they won't see it, they won't know how to turn in, it's going to be a problem. But it seems to me the installation of this traffic light is going to maybe not slow down traffic, but folks will be stopped at that intersection, which will provide an opportunity to see the Starbucks, right? There's going to be pedestrian signage, you said, which is going to draw people's eyes up where normally they would have just been driving by. And the traffic light itself might even draw people's eyes up. So I'm just wondering if the concern about not being able to see it is will be different when the traffic light is installed versus now. I mean, do you have an opinion on that? I mean, it just seems to me that this is going to be a much more visible, it's going to be a visible intersection, whereas now it doesn't even strike anyone as an intersection when you're driving by, which will give that, now this property is going to be a corner property and a very visible intersection with signage that will be viewable from all the cars that are parked or waiting at the light when it turns red.
I can answer your question from a traffic perspective only, okay? And I think everybody will kind of understand how we're coming from. From a traffic perspective only, I encourage boards to put adequate signage so that drivers can find where they're going. Okay, so that's a decision that we left up to you guys, what you consider to be, but I encourage you to make sure that there is enough signage. Sometimes developers get so carried away with so much sign clutter. I agree. I see it all the time. I see so much. But I think this is a challenge because we have a very new use. We have the elevation difference coming up Claremont. I think it's a decision for you. From a traffic perspective, I can only say I recommend there be adequate signage to make sure that drivers are going to be able to see it. This site sits in a hole. Okay, I'm not sure that the signs on the building are going to have enough of get enough of the eyebrow so those folks know where they're going. I mean, for those of us who are from town, we're gonna know where it's at, we're gonna get in and out of there, not be a problem. It's the knuckleheads that don't know where they're going, that are gonna come up, and those are the ones that I'm more concerned about. Why I wanna encourage you guys, please, and consider that having proper and visible signage for drivers is a help, okay? As far as how that fits aesthetically with the town, how that fits, that's the decision for you guys. My part is just the traffic part, which is please put enough signage so people can find their way there.
No, I understand that, and I guess, and I get that the traffic signal is a done deal, and that's been kind of emphasized a lot. But I guess the question related to, the software and yada yada, all that was kind of pushed. But for me, I can only really use the data that was provided, and when it was argued, certain direction, emphasizing the movement there. If I'm reading this correctly, it's a daytime gain of 3 at that intersection, based on the 2023 to 2026 full build, and then ultimately 91 if they see the sign and then get to the next entrance, daytime full build. I guess I'm just trying to get what is the gain of the 25-foot sign. The point was to get them to turn earlier and all this. So, not question again. That's just to kind of piggyback on the question that was just asked, it's what is the gain of the sign numerically based on the data that we're being provided? And if the data isn't sufficient, I'm looking at it like off of Claremont, only one person is going to come in during the day. Okay, we're not going to change the street sign being put in. Understood that. But if this data is not reflecting the impact of Starbucks at that intersection, then to be able to make an informed decision on the sign itself and the value of it, then what is the actual data that would support that? That's what I'm trying to make of this. I'm looking at 2023 versus 2026. And if different signage makes that better, then that's fine. I'd rather, discuss that. But is that 25-foot sign really going to make
I'm not
the
too
argument?
sure it's the number of people that are, all right, so when I'm thinking about signage, I'm not thinking about the number of people, I'm thinking only about the one knucklehead. So, I get where you're coming from. That's like, I said, from a traffic perspective, and that's all I can speak from. It's my only perspective on things, is having adequate signage directing people to where they want to go is always good. All right, it's just a positive thing. As far as whether it needs to be a 25-foot tall sign and 6 feet wide, and that I think there's many things going to it. In this case, I think my primary reason for, all right, so I think on part of this, I'd like to support the idea of having the sign up in the, so I'm thinking that right now, what they've asked for is a lollipop sign up in the front corner, somewhere how it fits in with my new traffic light, okay? I'm thinking that sign is going to be up at a higher elevation, and it's going to benefit primarily the drivers coming from Cedar Grove towards Bloomfield Avenue, okay? Because you have that uphill going, all right? And what it is you come up the hill, and the Starbucks, whatever the issue is, maybe 1,600 in a hole. So I see that as a benefit. I don't know how big that sign needs to be. I don't know what the elevation should be, but I do think that having something there will be helpful. Okay. Now, that next part of that is that's for you guys to determine what makes sense for Verona. What's going to fit there for Verona, or maybe the answer is it just needs to be, the signs on the building, and you feel that's what it's going to be. Traffic only, good signage, gets people where they want to go safely and efficiently. All right. As far as the number, I don't think it's. I think it's kind of hard because they can have 500 people coming from that direction. I guess I might want to use that to influence your decision, but I really would rather your decision be influenced by what's going to be safest and efficient, and give that one driver who doesn't know where he's going the best direction. That's the one I want you to think about. Is the one that just doesn't know where he's going. Okay, and so long as you guys get to that place, I think that will going to be just fine.
So in your opinion, another vertical, there's light poles, there's overhead wires, there's stop signs, there's do not turn, there's pedestrian signs, there's this. I mean, it's almost like a Route 22, where like, you don't even see them anymore because there's so much chaos, visual chaos. Do you feel like that would be the case here, or do you feel like confident that this would be
I think
visible?
we need to have the planner come and talk about that a little bit and make sure. I think visually there's a place where a sign fits there that makes sense, okay? And what I'm saying is, I'm not quite sure it needs to be 25 feet tall. I think that it could probably be a little lower. I think it needs to fit aesthetically correct. If you guys feel that that will help traffic get to the site safely and efficiently, then I think that the sign needs to be in the right place as it relates to the signal equipment, as it relates to the utility wires, as it relates to the buildings, and as it relates to the uphill on Route 23. So the location and size of this sign is very complicated in my opinion, all right? And it needs to be thought out really carefully and it needs to make sense where it's going to go. I would say that as far as that maybe if the board, I think that my advice, if I were on the other side here, would be, you have two ways of going with it. No, I don't like it, we're not saying okay to that. Or if we're going to go for the sign, it needs to be, no bigger than this size and no taller than this tall, and then now figure out how it fits out there. Because it's probably going to end up being that size or maybe a little less, and probably not as tall as you might be okay with, because it has to fit where it belongs here. And that would be something that Mr. Tenkate and our office would work out as far as what that height's going to be. But I think if you guys were to be in favor of having the sign, you should be definitely saying no more than this big and no more than this big. And then I think the engineers have to kind of work out how that fits on.
Perhaps I should have asked this question earlier, but when I was visiting the site, I noticed that there was a wrought iron fence that was on Pompton Avenue side.
Yep.
A portion of it is dilapidated and broken, and what's going to happen
It's
to?
going to get fixed. The contractor that's building the traffic light is supposed to fix the fence.
Okay, and I'm thinking in terms of signs and wondering if a sign could be there unless something else is going to be done with that area there. But that's for discussion.
That's outside my place. Like,
Right,
my place is just,
exactly, but
I
I
think
just
you need
want
to have
to
these
get-
signs to get people to where they got to go.
I want to get an answer to it. Okay.
So.
One other question, sorry. Going back to the traffic light, you said that the one at Bloomfield and the one at Claremont will be in sync, yes? Was there any consideration given to offsetting them as to manipulate some of this traffic or the queue getting out of Starbucks parking lot and into the flow of traffic?
I can tell you exactly how it's going to work, and I can tell you how we got there, and hopefully it'll help, okay? NJDOT has very strict guidelines with regard to how you offset one signal to the next, okay? Because they were the driving force in the design, that's how it's going. So the way it's going to work is the light at Claremont is going to turn yellow, and then I don't remember exactly how many seconds. We're going to say for conversation's sake, 6 seconds later, the light at Bloomfield is going to turn yellow. That's how the lights are coordinated. Okay, they're coordinated based on the yellow offset. All right, so this one will turn yellow, and 7 or 8 seconds later, then the one at Bloomfield will turn yellow. And that will turn red, and shortly after the other one will turn red. All right, that's how the state does it. That's one of those things that, depending on how it progresses over time, one of the things that I've seen us do a lot is we make them both turn at the same time. Drivers are very, very, especially work I've done in Hoboken and other towns where you have like 10 lights in a row. Lights work really well. Drivers really like it when everybody's sitting at the same red light. So when you do the yellow progression, the idea is to get a platoon of cars and have them go down the road more efficiently. Right? That's the deal. And again, it's the state wants, right? The state wants to push as many cars as they can down the highway. Okay? So that's how that was done. All right? Typically in a more local setting, something like this, we would tend to want to just have both turn red at the same time. The difference is going to be so little, it's going to be almost that. If it turns out it doesn't work well, most likely the county will make them both turn red at the same time.
Can you describe the traffic increase in cars due to the Starbucks, particularly on Claremont?
Sure. I have to go back to my report to do that.
You don't know this off the top of your head?
Yeah, the other 40 studies I wrote this week. Okay. So we're projecting that in the AM peak hour, there'll be one new person making a left turn going down Claremont and 87 cars making a right turn going to Pompton Avenue. Okay, so let's talk about the AM and PM peak hour is what we're going to talk about here, because the thing I want to study is the worst hour, the worst 1 hour of the day, because that's where I'm going to be able to make, if I can make the worst hour of the day work, that means everything else is going to be fine. Okay, obviously for Starbucks, you can all guess the AM peak hour is going to be the busy hour. Okay, that's when the most traffic is going to be there. So we're projecting that 87 cars in the AM peak hour is going to come to Claremont and make a right turn and go to the light. All right, so that's a little less than, that's about 1.5 cars per minute.
Coming south on Pompton.
Yeah, that's going to come out to the Starbucks, make a right turn and go there. So just for the sake of average, what's going on. So it's about every minute is going to be 1.5, so every 3 minutes is going to be about 3 cars. I'm sorry, every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, 3 cars will come to the driveway, make a right, go out there. So that's what's going to happen in the empty hour. That's the increase in traffic on the Claremont.
Will they then go left or right?
When they get to we were very conservative. We did our study and projected everybody makes a left. Obviously, making a right is a lot easier, and they have the right out driveway. So what we did to be conservative and make our analysis as conservative as possible, we put all the traffic going to Pompton Avenue making a left. And then any cars that were making a right, we put to the right out driveway in front of the site.
Back to the pylon sign, you mentioned going south on Pompton, maybe the worst of it. If I'm in the left lane going south and notice Starbucks, what is from your expertise, what is the recommended distance that you would recommend for me to merge into the right lane, right, from the point where I see something to where the intersect, or where I need to make my turn?
That's a really awesome question, and I don't have. I can give you some talk about that. I can talk about it a little bit. It's a really excellent question. So correct me if I'm right. What you're saying is, if I'm in the left lane over here, all right, and I see this, and we have a Starbucks pylon sign here, all right, and I'm driving here, and I'm over here, and I see that sign. I want to get in there. Is there enough room for me to merge over to the right lane, all right, and then get into the Starbucks? So that is a question that I don't have the engineering with, okay? But my answer to that is there should be, okay? And the reason I say there should be is because so long, and this kind of goes to my argument about sign probably not a bad idea, okay? Is that if somebody sees it, do they, if you do have that sign, all right, you guys probably aren't liking this, but if the sign's there and somebody sees it, they're going to be able to merge over and safely get to make the right turn. Whereas if they don't have the sign, the alternative is they get up to the light, they're in the left lane, they go, oh crap, I want to go to get Starbucks. You know what they're going to do, guys? Okay, and it's not going to be a favorable move. So that would be an argument for the pylon sign, okay, that if somebody was making that move. I think this is something that the board has to ponder and consider. So hopefully I was able to get enough of an answer for you.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like a comment on our report. The traffic report was submitted as part of the application, so we reviewed it according to our interpretation of it. So therefore, comments 1 and 3 deal with the technical aspects of it. At a minimum, I would recommend, and Mr. George suggested this, at the bottom of item 3, we recommend that after 4 months of it being in operation, that we look at it again and see how it's working with the police chief and provide our comments to Essex County. And that at a minimum should be a condition.
Mr. Tinkett, how much are we talking about this application, and how much are we talking about the light without regard to this application? Because
Well, sorry, go ahead.
we're, I mean,
Well, I think they kind of go hand in hand, because people go in and out of the Starbucks who are affected by light. I mean, obviously, we're dealing with the application, but it has an effect on the site.
Yeah, I somewhat agree, because the traffic light's been ongoing for 4.5 years or whatever it is. They didn't anticipate a Starbucks coming in here when they did their analysis, right?
Okay, so
I'm going to disagree with you, Christie, for a second. We anticipated something going in there, okay? I mean, that building has been vacant, what, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever, okay? So realistically, we know another bank wasn't going to go in there. Banks are closing, okay, left and right. So, the main thing one of the main variants is the use variance, which has sort of gotten lost in the conversation here. But that's really the first thing we have to consider before we get into, to me, the traffic stuff. And I don't think, I just don't think we can we certainly can recommend to the town that they do you're saying that they do a post-analysis, and, once it's in
the point
there.
is, we have to know how much, because the light has never been there.
Yeah.
We have to know what Starbucks impact is, and we don't. So what does that 4-month have to do with the application? Or what does the application have to do with the 4 months? So do we incorporate this time period and this post-decision study into this decision? Like, in other words, we make a condition, in 4 months, something in this application is going to change, but we don't know whether the application is the reason for this light failing, if indeed it fails.
I think we're talking failing, we're talking about.
Whatever, to have to be improved. So I'm not sure that it has anything to do with the application, is what I'm saying. And then we make it a condition when we don't know why. Make sense? Am I making sense?
I do think the applicants proposed a light, the whole property owner proposed a light in order to make the property more viable.
See, I'm going to stop you there, because I have more history with this than you. I think we've established that. Okay. There was other considerations. It wasn't just making the property owner, happy. Okay. There was enough complaints about traffic flow in that area, okay, to warrant us to look at it very thoroughly before we supported the applicant's position, if you want to put it that way. If you're questioning our motivation, I can't put that in and out of your head. But when we looked at it, we had a very diverse group of people. Like I said, we consulted the chief, we consulted the fire department, we looked at accident reports that there were numerous accidents on that without a light. Pedestrian safety, as I just pointed out before, was considered.
Okay, I think
you get that.
We got it. The light's going in no matter what. So
But
let's just
to Sarah's point, how can we make that a condition of, if the light, we didn't put the light in. As a board, I think we're overstepping our authority.
That's my suggestion.
That's all.
They can look at it,
Yeah.
but it can't have any impact on this application, is my point, because this application is totally different from the light. Unless there is a traffic issue, which I have not heard, that has been raised because of the volume of the traffic, or because of the queue on Claremont Avenue, or because of the left turn, the light is totally independent of the Starbucks. And I don't think it's fair, if this approval is granted, to say, oh, but we're going to look at it in 4 months, and you may have to change your driveway.
Or to your point, if they
I'm exaggerating to make the point.
If they wanted a drive-through, that would be totally change the equation.
But Peter, I'm doing exaggeration to make the point. Even a little tweak, it's not on them, because because it has not been raised. I think 80% of this dialogue, quite honestly, personally, has been off the track. It has nothing really to do with the application. So.
I think that was my point earlier.
Why didn't you insist on it an hour ago? No.
I agree. It's much better if I let you reach your own conclusion.
There you go.
I don't have any more questions, Mr. Jar. We're now at a point where we're ready for questions from the public. And then when that's done, I'd like to ponder a request from the applicant to the board. So why don't we get questions from the public? And then I'll surprise you with my request.
Are there any members from the public that would like to have any questions for this witness?
It's me again. Sorry. Do I have to say my name?
Yes, please.
I'm Lauren Yannon. I live on Montclair Avenue. I know that we've talked a lot about cars, and I appreciate it because that's actually rear-ended at the intersection, which is why I go up Linden and bother the people on Cliff to get to my house. But I am really concerned. The common theme that I'm going to keep asking is about the kids, because if you've ever been to the Starbucks in Montclair, it is just filled with preteens. It is like our Walgreens, but like thousands of them. And I am really concerned about the timing of the light. So I guess my question is, what is the, if you know, what are the seconds that pedestrians have to cross here? Because I have pretty long legs and I run across intersections in this town to make the light.
Actually, I can answer exactly that question.
Are you asking about crossing Claremont Avenue
Yeah, I'm asking about crossing.
from north to south?
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, like to
Right.
get on to the Starbucks
Okay.
from Pumpton via Claremont, I guess, that's where.
That's what happened when you took the glasses on the papers out. I don't think. There may have been some minor tweaking on this final time, but I can give you a real good idea. And I can tell you that it will meet current standards that are fully handicap accessible. This was the question that you asked. I wanted to show this. This is the overhead wiring plan. Yeah, the detail in this. Every little detail is getting checks.
Can you just make sure you put your mic on so it's picked up by the recording? Thank you.
I found it. Sorry. Last sheet. Okay, sorry about that. So, when the pedestrian push buttons hit, the walking indication that says it's okay to walk is going to flash for 7 seconds. So you get 7 seconds to walk. Then the flashing don't walk. So then what will happen is you press the button. Okay, it'll say wait until it's time to walk, because the cycle, depending on where the signal is in the cycle, you can't just go right walk across. You got to press the button. You have to wait your turn. Okay, it will cycle, and then what will happen is the walking person will come up in the indication. All right, and the button will say to you walk, walk, walk. It will do that for 7 seconds. Then, after 7 seconds, it's going to give 14 more seconds, and it's going to say 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. Okay, and then it's going to go to the don't walk indication. Okay, and that's how it's going to work on when you're crossing across Claremont Avenue. Different for crossing. Obviously, it's a longer crossing across Route 23, Pumpkin Avenue. That one is going to be 7 seconds, and then it's going to have 16 seconds of don't walk, where it says 16, 15, 14. So you get 16 seconds. So you get 7 plus 16 to cross Pumpkin, and you get 7 plus 14 to cross Claremont. More than adequate. It's a very, very conservative approach. None of the lights that you have in town work that way right now. They're all based on a different set of rules.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the detail there. I guess my next question is, and I might not have heard you because I'm really tired.
Me too.
But I'm really tired. These meetings go really late, so thank you, everyone. But did you say that the property owner or Starbucks was trying to get additional money to find some signal thing that you couldn't find until Christmas?
The property owner had volunteered up that if I could find somebody to supply the equipment sooner, they'd pay a premium to get that equipment.
Okay, so then how is this not related to that? So if the property owner is offering up additional funding to get this light installed, presumably so that they can support their business, how is that
No,
not
no.
important to
You're
this?
reading that wrong.
I'm not reading that.
Let him answer the question.
The answer to the question is nobody, from the time we got the light approval in November, we got the equipment order in. Okay? Nobody wanted to take that long. The chief didn't want to take that long, the town didn't want to take that long. Everybody was appalled at the amount of time. After getting a lot of complaints from management, the town, chief, myself, they volunteered up to do that. I don't even know, again, that business part is not my part in this. My part, yeah, and so as far as like your assumption of that, I can only tell you from my part of it was that there were a lot of complaints in reaction to those complaints about how long it was going to take, they offered to try and do something more, which I thought was great.
Well, sure, but it's great that it's self-serving, because then they can say,
Well-
look, this has implications for this very traffic
For the
area.
entire rest of the project, for the entire rest of that site, because then you can make a left-hand turn where now you can't make a left-hand turn onto Claremont. So now you can make a left-hand turn and go back into the site and go to Ray's Pizza, or go to what was the Huntington Learning Center, or go to the Acura dealership if you want to meander down through. So that's not something that's been testified to as far as what's that volume. But if you owned Ray's Pizza, you would want that light there so that someone could turn around and go through the Starbucks parking lot and go to the portion for Ray's Pizza. So, right, well, that's one of the reasons for the light.
So that makes sense, that doesn't make $10,000 worth of sense, so there's not all 70 cars going into one parking
I don't
lot.
have an opinion on it, I'm just telling you what I think would go through the owner's mind.
I fundamentally disagree that these are not connected, and I do think you should recuse yourself. Thank you.
Of course, they felt there's going to be I don't think they're being totally altruistic, if that's your point about agreeing to pay for the light, but it does not just benefit them, is my point. It does benefit the community. That's what we have to decide. The balance between, is it just totally selfish benefiting them, or is there a benefit to the community as a whole?
And there is, because I live off of their block.
Right.
And I'm happy that it's going in, but I don't think that this is clean. It's not.
Okay, I'm not giving them any medals. We're not going to pass a proclamation saying they're wonderful people. That's not the point here. It's just the point as to whether or not it is going to benefit them, and is the benefit to them also going to accrue to other parts of the community? And you, as a resident nearby, we certainly have to factor your opinion in.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Yes, thank you. Anyone else from the public have a question for this witness?
How's everybody doing? Robert Dirgo, Claremont.
Sorry, spell your name, please.
DENUTO, first name Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Sure. So one, I would encourage folks to actually visit the site. There is no hill on Upton, which is we're clear. When we pass that, Mr. Cruz previously mentioned that there would be deliveries by a tractor trailer. I don't have the updated schematic to show the pork chop that we're kind of talking about changing logistics. I'm just curious if you've considered how the delivery vehicles will enter and exit the premises, given there's a 4-ton weight limit on Claremont Avenue. So just make sure that that's considered.
Hold on. You said there would not be any tractor trailers.
I believe the comment was tractor trailers, or they would downsize it.
No. He said there would be no tractor trailers.
Only
My
box trucks, maximum 30 footers, probably 24 footers.
Sure. Regardless of that, my pickup truck's almost 3 tons, so a delivery truck's got to be over 4. So I'm just making sure they consider that in how their delivery is going to occur, because obviously I haven't seen the news.
Mr. DeNuto,
Yes.
you'll have an opportunity when everything is done for your statements.
Yeah.
Right now's questions.
Sure.
Okay. You've made 2 good points, but save those for later. Okay.
What would be the impact of the bus stop on the traffic light and Starbucks patrons entering and exiting the premises or turning onto Claremont?
Can you specify which bus stop?
The bus stop that is on Pompton Avenue at Claremont.
On which side of the street?
Sorry, southbound. Right in front of the first area.
The impact will be when the bus comes, it will cause some delay in traffic, like it does today. It shouldn't be anything different than it is today.
Good. Do we know, I know you had said 87 AM peak hours for vehicles. I believe you were talking about exiting Starbucks on Claremont at 15 Bungle. He's going to ride the bike soon. How many more vehicles can I expect to be traveling up and down my street while my son's riding his little bike with the, to possibly go?
It's just going to be your neighbors, just, I mean, generally speaking, right, anybody going to go to Starbucks is going to be within that neighborhood coming and going from that direction. I don't think that people are going to, just because of the configuration down in Bloomfield Avenue and how things are configured, I don't think people are going to be drooling up Claremont to go to the Starbucks. They're going to come down Bloomfield Avenue to go to Starbucks.
So you're saying that the light is going to be synchronized with Bloomfield Avenue. So I'm curious, how many vehicles will be able to stack at that light before the entrance? I believe it was already asked, but I'm just curious if there's a number that you purport will be able to stack at the light before the entrance and exit to Starbucks is blocked. Because I'm concerned that vehicles trying to come off Pompton to get into Starbucks won't be able to enter, and then you'll kind of have a jam.
I have to look at this.
Sure.
The stacking.
I apologize for not getting the direction.
From here to here.
So Claremont eastbound.
Without having a scale I'm looking at, I believe it's the stacking right now is about 300 feet. At the end of the day, you and I both know that from time to time it stacks up here.
Yeah.
It all depends on what's going on in the area, what the stacking is. It comes and goes, it's going to flux. If anything, the coordination between the two lights might help us out because this light will meter some of the traffic going in there, so the queuing may not be as bad. So the traffic light by mere virtue of the metering it's going to create between the two locations may actually help that a little bit.
I know there was comment made about no turn on red, so I know that's, you said it's not planned.
It's not incorporated at this time, but it's already been brought up and discussed with the county, and they said, no, let's wait until, we actually.
I think his question is more on the queuing on Claremont.
Exactly.
That was looking to make a left or right onto Pompton. So how many cars that are stopped on Claremont heading, eastbound, like at that corner, could fit before?
You're talking here.
Yeah, exactly, before blocking the driveway into Starbucks.
The smaller queue distance, it's only about 150 feet approximately, so it's more in the area of 5 cars would be be queued to the light, but that's going to be a function of the light cycling, right? So the cars are going to pull, it's going to be an actuated light, it's going to be a microwave detector that shoots down into that area. So when the cars come up, it's going to pick up the cars, it's going to cycle the light, and off they go. So again, it's going to vary in a heavy time if during the heavy time is going to be peak hour for sure. Okay, I have no question about that. According to our analysis, the queue is never going to exceed 5 cars based on this is the computer model generating it. We all know that it's more people are going to come for a 5-minute period than less. The light will extend though, so if the queue does go back, it'll give more green time to clear it out.
But is that based on current traffic patterns or traffic patterns when Starbucks gets there?
But that's based on proposed traffic patterns. All right. Remember, it's going to have a traffic light that's going to have detection. So when the cars queue up there, it's going to pick it up and send them on their way.
So all the people in the neighborhood who currently don't bother with that intersection at all,
yes,
who now will,
yes,
have been accounted for.
They will. We've projected. I don't remember the exact number. But we projected that there would be a little bit of an increase in traffic coming up that way, right? Because we know. I mean, I know from working here that people avoid that intersection. It's really hard. I mean, even right turns out sometimes a problem.
So thanks for that. There's not going to be detection on the other side?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there's going to be detection on 23 for the left turn lane, okay, and there's detection on both side streets for us. So I make sure the town is still well taken care of. We have traffic detection on both sides of Claremont, and we're going to have traffic detection on 20. That was another fight with the DOT. DOT doesn't like to put on, they want the highway to work the way the highway works. So that was another win for the county. The county wants to put detection for, so if you're coming up 23 and you want to make a left turn on Claremont, there's going to be a detector there. So that traffic will be picked up.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the public? Mr. Dusenberry, I believe you have, you're going to enlighten us with a request?
No. Surprise and a request. After listening to all the questions back and forth and the speculation between Starbucks operations and the traffic signal, which is going to go in regardless of what you do here, I went over and consulted both with my client and with Starbucks. And we think that we will accept a condition of the resolution to the effect that Starbucks will not operate until the signal is operational. Okay. Think about that. I mean, Starbucks may not open for 6 months if we can't get the traffic signal, but it avoids all of your distress and concern about how is this going to work, which way is it going to go. We'll stay in operational until the signal is working.
Yes, we'll allow one more question.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Please,
My
please,
name is
yeah.
Cindy. I just have a quick
Can you say your last name and spell it, please?
Chen, But quick question, when you say there's going to be a detection on Claremont Avenue when there's traffic, I'm just confused, because you said the traffic light on Claremont Avenue is going to be concurrent with the light on Bloomfield Avenue. So what does that mean? If the detection is going to track the traffic on Claremont, which then will give a green light so the traffic can flow?
I have that question. I have that question every day when I hit to cross Bloomfield Avenue.
So does that,
Because
like-
all the lights are supposed to be synced, but if I change it, what happens?
Yeah, I don't understand. I just didn't understand that part.
First of all, I can tell you the reason for
Wait a minute, this question is not answered.
That's right.
So I'm going to answer both. You have two different things going on here. Okay. So there's a difference between the synchronization of the lights and the detection. Okay? The light, the new traffic light will be synchronized with light with them. So that means people on Route 23, Pompton, all right, they're going to be working together. So the light's going to turn yellow at Pompton, and then 5 or 6 seconds later, the light's going to turn yellow at Bloomfield Avenue, and they're both going to be red. Okay? On Claremont, different things going on. All right? Claremont's a slave to that operation. Okay? So the key operation is keeping the county road working as efficiently as possible. The slave to the operation will be the signal, and will be the detection on Claremont. If there are no cars on Claremont, the light's not going to change. It's going to stay green on Pompton Avenue.
Okay.
Now, I come up, I got my cup of coffee, and I drive out, I make the right, I get at the light, there's going to be a detector that's going to pick that car up. All right, depending on where the signal is on, well, maybe there's pedestrian actuation, or I don't know what's happening out on Pompton Avenue, but Pompton Avenue will get serviced first. Once Pompton Avenue is serviced to the green time maximums that are required, all right, then the light will turn green on Claremont Avenue, and then you'll be able to go out and make a left or right straight over.
And then Bloomfield turns when Claremont turns?
Bloomfield has nothing to do with it.
Oh, because I didn't
Bloomfield Avenue
understand.
is going to be the master intersection. Bloomfield Avenue is going to tell our light at Claremont what to do with regard to that synchronization, okay? Claremont is just going to get green time that lets the cars out onto the Route 23 when it's sensed.
When it's sensed, okay. And how will that, because again, I live right next door, right, to the property. Will I have trouble getting in out of my driveway? Like, that's my, like, going to work, taking my daughter to school.
If anything, it should help because right now, I've seen cars back up past your driveway.
No, it doesn't.
So, with the light, it's going to get sensed, the traffic detector.
Never had a problem.
Okay, fine. With the traffic light, it's going to sense the traffic, it's going to give it a green light, and they're going to clear out. It's going to create opportunities for you to get out of there.
So when everyone is waiting at the light and it's backing Claremont Avenue, I'll be able to get out of my driveway.
Right, then the light will turn green. The traffic light will sense the traffic, and it will turn the light green so you can get out.
Okay, thank you. No.
Am I back on?
You're back. Yes, please. Continue.
Okay, I didn't answer this question. Just so you know, the county turned off temporarily the synchronization on Bloomfield Avenue's out of commission. There's a break in the line. That's why it's not working. But they're working on it.
After the meeting, I'll ask.
Okay. Maybe the surprise. I think it's a fair and reasonable restriction. Let's just make sure they work at the same time. Here's the request. It's really clear to me that there's a lot of wrestling with the pylon sign. And from to a lesser degree, the 5-foot sign on the side of the building is the only Starbucks symbol on the building, other than the words across the front. So it's the only branding location. So what I would ask the board to do is to consider tonight allowing the applicant to bifurcate the approval, to separate out the two requests for the signs, which are new variances. And I'll talk about the two non-conforming D3 issues in a moment. But by doing that, it will allow the applicant to focus in a much greater detail with our planner, the angles, give you some demonstrative diagrams and evidence that planners do in their normal course of presentations, and also will allow the applicant to consider a few things. One, can we drop the 25 down to a lower height? And can we reduce the size of the medallion itself, the size of a lollipop, and still have it be in a location that doesn't interfere with wires, light signal poles, light poles, and things like that, and provides enough advance warning that there is a Starbucks coming. So to me, what that would entail is, all right, how many feet up Pompton Avenue do you have to go before you can't see the building? How many feet up Pompton Avenue from the left lane to look to get over to the right lane? When can only the building sign be seen to then have somebody either try and shift lanes to get over, if that's the only sign that's there, or quickly make a right turn into the second entrance into the site? I think that we can provide you with more detail, and if it doesn't persuade you, it doesn't persuade you. But I think we'd like to have the opportunity to make that case, because I look at this as a layperson, and I've driven 15 times down Pompton Avenue to try and get a sense of when I'd see that building, and I don't like it, but that's me. All right, I have to persuade those who vote that they agree with that analysis, that there's some benefit to the sign. And it's not for the everyday run-of-the-mill person who knows where Starbucks is, or the Gen Xer who knows where it is because they got it on their app and they don't care about a sign. But it's for those people who, at the last minute, see it and want to get to it. And maybe they go down Bloomfield Avenue, do a U-turn, I don't know, go around and come up Verona. But the point is that I think I would like to suggest that on the 12th, we come back with a much more focused consideration for the sign. And that this evening, based on all the testimony you've heard, we have a site plan that works. The applicant has tried to at least enhance green space to ameliorate or mitigate the D3 variances. Because remember, we have two D3 variances. We have the one for not having 20% open space on the site, which we don't have. And we have the one for not having 15-foot buffers along the residential lines. Keep in mind, those residential buffers don't exist behind the Acura dealership, or to the extent they do, they've been approved by this board from prior site plan approvals for the Acura dealership. So we're really focusing on the one buffer along the one residence on Claremont. So it's been there for probably 20 or 30 years now. We've proposed some increases. We think we've given you good reasons why. We resulted with what we are showing you on the exhibits tonight in color as to what we're adding. We're trying to mitigate the buffers. We're trying to mitigate the open space issue. to the extent we can. And if this board can determine that the mitigation is reasonable under the circumstances based on the pre-existing non-conformity of it, I think that you can find favorably for those two variances without going any further on the testimony. So if you think the site works, and if you think the changes for engineering that have been agreed to on the record work, we think that you can find that the change of use itself is a permitted use in this zone. It's a restaurant use. It's permitted. The parking for the 4 discrete uses on the eastern land of the site is adequate, meets the requirements. Now, we would ask you to consider whether or not you will defer the 2 sign variances for further hearing and consider an approval for the change of user and for the minor site plan. Now, keep in mind on the site plan, we've done nothing but improve the site. We're removing the bank canopy. We're adding new dumpster locations. We're adding 5 new parking spaces to make sure that this site will, in the future, operate comfortably. And we are trying to get as much green space as we can. And the applicant's going to resurface the paving and restripe it all. We're going to landscape it. It's going to be beautiful. And it's going to look the way I think any person in town would drive by and say, that's a good job. As opposed to my other standard, when I have applications that I'm not so favored by, where I look by and I say when something's finished, what were they thinking when they approved it? I don't think this is the case. I think this is a good-looking building. It's typical for Starbucks, and I'd ask you to consider deliberating and whether or not you will first bifurcate the application, let us return. We may rethink it and change course on it, but it gives the applicant time to do it. And what's the benefit of bifurcating it? It allows a lot of stuff to go on behind the scenes. You know, this is a big deal, this agreement between Starbucks and the owners of the property. There are a lot of moving parts that can be addressed with a partial approval. A lot of things that can happen. So we'd ask you to consider that. If not, then we are not prepared to go further with the pylon sign and building sign application this evening, and we would adjourn to the 12th. So that's where we are.
Mr. Dusenberry, did the board ever make a determination whether this was a permitted use or whether it's non-conforming because it's the multiple uses? I think it was discussed, but I don't think it was ever determined.
Well, as I recall, the actual Starbucks use is a restaurant. That's a permitted use.
Right.
So and I'm not sure I get 100% of your question, but if I see where you're going, the real linchpin is the Acura dealership and the fact that it's a non-conforming use.
Right.
But it's an approved non-conforming use. So I don't think that that prevents us from pursuing this as a conditional use 2D3 variances based on the mitigation of pre-existing non-conformities. Or I would also ask you to consider it as a change of pre-existing conditions to allow a permitted use to replace a permitted use, and in the analysis for doing so, say that the parking is adequate, we have ordinances dealing with open space and buffers, and that we feel the pre-existing conditions with the mitigation. You can go either way.
That was your alternative last month, right. But I don't know that it was ever determined.
Because I think the analysis is the same on the pre-existing 2 conditions of 20% open space and the 15-foot buffers, whether you look at this as an existing site of non-conforming principal uses. And the reason I'd ask you to consider it both ways is because I don't want to find out on an appeal or some later date that my conditional use approach to this is tainted by the fact that the Acura is a non-conforming use, although it is approved by this board and has been for multiple site plans.
Right. My concern for this board and personally is I knew that was an issue.
Yep, we never decided.
We never decided, and I don't know that I'm prepared, and I know I'm not prepared to give the board my opinion or the benefit, for whatever it's worth, of my analysis. And you're asking for something tonight that I'm not ready to present to the board. I apologize for that, but you've surprised us with this.
Well, I didn't know I was going to go that.
Right. No, I'm sure you would have given me a heads up, but I'm not sure of my opinion on
Which way the board should go.
which way the board should go. And the board obviously will ultimately determine, and they can weigh my recommendation. But I haven't given it enough, enough analysis and looked into it. I appreciate both of your arguments. I think in a way they do both have some validity, but I think I need to have a stronger opinion than I can offer right
You
now.
wouldn't have to have a different opinion if you had them approve it both ways.
You want to take that risk?
Both ways?
Well, you can't have it both ways, though. You can't, I mean.
No, but you can find that the board finds that these uses have existed as non-conforming uses, although the Acura has been approved as a non-conforming use, and that this is just a change of permitted use in one building on the site, and that you've analyzed the site plan changes affiliated with that, and you find them to be acceptable. And then, in the alternative, you can say that we believe that if the conditional use ordinance applies, that these same two non-conforming issues would be valid as.
I appreciate your.
You're not comfortable with it, then I'm not going to.
Right, thank you, because I think we need to do the second part, the way you presented, I think we need to do the second part first, and then.
And then see if you like the alternative.
Right.
Okay, well, look, it's a request. I can understand your reluctance to go forward, and having sat in your chair, I simply would say that we need to adjourn to the 12th.
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer that, obviously, because I need to give it some more analysis.
And I would certainly prefer to have your opinion presented for the board members
And you can
before,
take it for what it's worth.
before bringing it to a vote. So I guess having said that, we will carry this application to the September 12th meeting at 7:30 at Town Hall.
And yes, I will
You'll
agree to any extensions required by statute for the decision to be made, interaction to be taken by this board.
And there would be no further notice to the
No
public?
further notice to the public.
Thank you. So, just before we adjourn this, I think we've heard a lot of your questions. We will do what we can to try and answer them, and we hope that we made some progress.
Mr. Disbury, I mean, if it's okay with the board, I think the board can address the D3 issues at the beginning of the next meeting if you want to, start that way. I wouldn't hesitate to be prepared, obviously, at the beginning, because I think those issues have been addressed and are ready.
And then ask the board to vote separately.
Right.
And then continue on with the variance application.
Right, assuming you get approval.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Because if we don't get that far, then the signs are unnecessary.
Right, right.
So just to make sure I understand correctly, at the beginning of the next meeting, we will, hear your recommendation and then weigh in if we bifurcate the application for the D variances, and then if that gets approved, then we would continue the application for the
At some
sign.
point in that little sequence you've described, Mr. Chairman, you have to decide when you're going to have statements from the public.
Right, which we can't decide until we get the statements also. Right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The town hall, is that like where the police station is?
Yes.
Next month it'll be-
Second floor.
Is that-
Yep.
Okay, so is there any reason that we need to go to an executive session?
Not that I'm aware, Mr. Chairman.
Can I just ask a quick question, a procedural question? So this application has been kind of modifying things based on what our recommendations are and some of our concerns. At what point does it become like a different application?
Very, very, very rarely. There's provisions in the UL that allow an applicant to modify the application during the course of the application. So I have never had an experience where, it's too much and you have to start over, other than at the applicant's election if they think they're going to get denied. But, there's a lot of leeway, and once they're in and there's notice is the key, they're allowed to change it.
Can you refresh our memory, Greg, as to why the jurisdiction was changed again? I know this was originally filed before the planning board.
That's a good question.
And it wound up with us.
Because,
and I thought,
and that's something that we're talking about with, whether, when I got this application for the planning board, I looked at it and I said, wait a minute, there's 4 principal uses on one lot, which is not permitted. And that would trigger, trigger the question.
So if I understood Mr. Dusenberry correctly, he's saying the use that he's now applying for is permitted, but because we have the
multiple uses.
Okay, all right.
So that's one of his arguments is, hey, yes, we need a variance, but everything complies.
Okay.
But for 4 principal uses on one lot.
Okay, no, thank you, that clarifies it a little bit for me. Yeah.
There's 4, you tell them we're still in the meeting.
Yes, we're still in the meeting, if everyone could just keep your voices down.
You can leave, but.
Tell them there's no decisions that are made.
What was the question? They first made the application to the planning board. Okay. But the planning board doesn't have jurisdiction over use variances. There's no zone. The 4 primary uses on one lot is not permitted under a zoning law. So because it's not permitted, it's the zoning board that has jurisdiction. The planning board only has jurisdiction for permitted uses. So that's what kicked it here to the zoning board. Now, the question that has been asked is it really not permitted? Even though there's 4 principal uses, they're all permitted in the zone, and Acura was in fact endorsed by the board. If Acura had not been here and gotten an approval, then one of their arguments would not even have been presented. But Mr. Dusenberry is saying, hey, wait a minute, the board already granted it, and we are just changing from one permitted use to another in the back. It has nothing to do with any of the 3 other uses that have been approved. So that's one of his arguments, is that they're almost entitled to.
Okay. And you're going to opine on that, on his argument?
Exactly, right.
Okay, let us know. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
And anything that we grant carries over to another variance in years to come, possibly. For example, if we grant a pylon that's 25 feet tall, that carries over to any other.
The variance runs with the land. Right. However, with the sign, the design of the sign is also what's approved, because if the sign does not comply, then all aspects, with any of the requirements, then all aspects of the sign, if any aspect of the sign is going to be changed, then approval would again be necessary. So if it went from Starbucks to Dunkin' Donuts, they would need approval. Right. Because the sign itself does not, the sign is not just, it's the branding on the sign as well, because it's the color, it's the lighting. Unless we're going to be actually the same, my position would be you need new approval, just by changing the lighting, because part of the testimony has to do with the lighting.
But that's a moot point if we don't approve the,
Well, that's right.
We don't even get to that.
Right.
Well, but that's interesting though, because we already denied the pylon sign on this site.
Different sign.
Yeah.
Different spot, different location.
Right.
Different use, different size. So there's no res judicata on that. That was a
Yeah.
preliminary question that Kathleen and I had talked about when we got the, I think it was whether in fact that had been already discussed. So, all right.
All right, do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, 10:45.